All right, welcome everybody to the pre-show. Just realized that we're in the wrong channel, and
I'll move us down.
that yeah,
Yeah, there we go.
here we go. And that McLeod needs to turn on his camera.
Yes, I do, but I need to also fucking sort out my fucking background and stuff, yeah. But yeah, I will. I will do so, don't worry, Ace. And hello, everybody.
All right, so welcome everybody. I know it's an exciting week. Obviously, there is a ton to cover this week. Not to break any crazy news, but obviously, New World has its summer patch that will be coming tomorrow, and uh, Star Citizen has its major point release coming as well, both tomorrow, which means my
Potentially tomorrow,
weekend
yeah.
is gone. um,
I don't know what I'm going to be doing tomorrow because, like, obviously, this show, we're running this show and it's like finishing fairly late for me. So, my circadian rhythm gets fucked over every single Wednesday/Thursday. And
yeah,
I'm probably going to wake up to the point where wake up just as the patches and stuff are rolling in. So I don't know. And then Friday I'm like literally doing renovations and stuff. So yeah.
it's
There's
gonna
there's
be an
some grinding
interesting.
that needs to be had.
Yeah, the New World stuff. There's gonna be a ton that needs to change. Um, yeah, there's going to be a ton of stuff for the New World side of things that is going to need some more grind or some new grind. Um, I'm actually really liking what I'm seeing here. Like, and we've covered a lot of these changes on previous episodes. So like, part of me is like, we shouldn't cover like the full patch notes because we've kind of already done that. The other part of me is like, maybe we need to. Like, we've already pulled out like the highlights. Um, like the big things that are, we should know. Um, from the new update here. But at the same time, there's a lot more to it than what we've pulled. It's it's an insane amount of patch notes. Absolutely bonkers.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's pretty crazy. And yeah, like, to give you an indication, we only learned about obviously about the updates coming kind of fairly recently-ish. And so to give you guys a bit of an insight as to how we develop the show, we generally tend to put together the show notes, throughout the week or sort of like towards the end of the week or the start of the week kind of thing. And they generally tend to go quite chronologically through the week. But obviously when you get when you get sort of announcements like we did today about updates coming, clearly you want to put that breaking news at the start of the show, right? That's the logical thing to say. Is like, you know, especially when it comes to news show, you're not doing a kind of like a big reveal at the end that nobody knows about. Like, people know about it, and they're probably coming to the show to watch it, to have your kind of reaction or get your kind of take on it. So leading with everything chronologically all the way through, and then right at the end sort of doing the whole like, oh yeah, by the way, it's releasing whenever, it is, I don't think it works in that kind of sense. And like Ace and I were talking about this before the show, and so where do you put that? because you put like you obviously kind of want to put that at the start as like breaking news, but then when the rest of the news afterwards is basically talking about the PTR patch having updates. Well, the PTR patch having updates is basically what's coming and what you talked about in the breaking news, essentially. So it's like, do you cover it? Do you not cover it? Like, how does that work out? And yeah, it's. I mean, if you guys are interested in hearing about it, like, then fair enough. Like, but I guess in some way, shape, or form, it informs you as to the most recent updates to the patch before the patch actually comes out. So maybe that's maybe that is of some kind of use or some kind of relevance or importance in some way, shape, or form. I have no idea, but yeah, it's it's difficult to structure these things.
It is, and like a show like this is obviously not short to begin with. So like and there's a ton of different things to cover because it's not like the communities are quiet. You know, otherwise, like it was an actually busy week before before the major releases, and now it's an absolutely bonkers week. You know, but yeah, I had something that I saw earlier today. The Sorry, just checking into something here. I think it's the Saudi Arabian uh, country introduced a new like super project, uh, and it's pretty crazy. Um, the project is referred to as the Wall, and it's basically a city um, that's built in a line, has a basically trains that go from either end. It's 500 meters tall and 170 kilometers in length, and it's built as a wall covered in mirrors and glass. Um, and it's basically them just trying to futurize their country. Um, and it's a
I
very
mean,
interesting project.
the the question that comes up is what major advantages is there to having it like a wall, like linear? Because there's l- logic says that there's a reason why we build the cities how we build cities, because it becomes you require sort of being inside of multiple arcs or radiuses of uh, certain services, certain amenities, and all that kind of jazz. And I can the only thing that I can think of with a city built very linearly is you're much less likely to be in multiple arcs or in sort of like a good situ or good location to a bunch of things. You're
So
losing a bunch of
the
space.
the idea is that it's going to be built in a kind of districts, and that everything should be within every housing, shopping, uh, everything you could need is within walking distance of where you live. And the thought process there is that you take an elevator up and down, and you can get everything kind of in one space a lot easier than than you can uh, by spreading it out, because you're adding an up down axis instead of just the XY axis of normal city planning. Um, I don't know if that means like if I want to get a job at a different company, do I need to move down the wall to where they are? Like I don't think they've thought some of that stuff out. Um, but they do have the ability to transition uh, across, and it's going to have its own like super fast trains and stuff like that. But it's designed to house 9 million people, which you know
Damn.
that it's not a small project. That's by you know yeah. It's estimated it's going to cost them somewhere in the ballpark of $500 billion. Um, and yeah, it's definitely going to be it's going to be a much better um, investment than things like Dubai and the World Island development, where they were making their own little islands, which turned out to be
Oh,
a terrible
but
idea.
that was but that was just like a fancy with people by people with like far too much money.
Yeah, like this like the pictures of it are insane. Like the concepts and all that. It's like a super futuristic city. Um, Posted in the chat there for people if they want to take a look. Um, the idea
I
is
mean,
that it's going to have its own green spaces, its own farming spaces inside. Um, so like they're going to be able to like the walls itself are going to be mirrors and glass, and they're going to have the ability to transition light in and out to facilitate growing wildlife in there. So, and much of it is actually going to be empty open space. It will also have no cars. Obviously, like um,
so quick question regarding this: isn't this just like an expanded idea of the world ship, but without having to deal with it being a ship and on the sea?
pretty much. You know, like one of the interesting things is that the design has it going out into the water. Um, so like it's basically building its own port. That will basically you know basically be one of the largest ports there is to begin with, but will be pulling in all of these resources, and then rapid transit and freight systems to allow it to kind of ensure the whole city has what they need. So like it's kind of an interesting plan. It's something that you could really only do when you have the absurd amount of money that um, that the Saudi Arabian government has. Um, I gotta say, I like the idea.
Yeah, I could imagine that, but like, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. It just feels like that money could be used in such different ways. But like, if if it's if the idea is to showcase how a community can be built that is much more self-sustaining and much more, like resource light, then maybe. But I don't know. It's an interesting idea for sure. It's very kind of like interesting from a sort of like a city planning and SimCity esque sort of feel of it. Like, yeah,
Yeah, like it's very different. Like I'll be the first one to say I agree that like the money could be spent in like 500 billion different ways. Um, that don't involve building a giant wall in the desert dash ocean. Um, you know, um, but at the same time, like, this kind of thing about like developing the future and developing what the future is going to look like, uh, needs to have grand scale investment like this. And I think like Saudi Arabia is trying to move away from, they're trying to move away from oil. They're trying to move away from all of that, and they know that they've got a finite timeline to do that. And I think something like this provides this ulterior benefit, um, and alternate kind of way of being, without um, without going crazy, you know, like without basically running out of money from just not investing in the future. And they're aiming to have like all kinds of different, futuristic tech, and um, a lot of solar power, a lot of, um, a lot of what seems to be very well thought out approaches to this.
An interesting design. It's an interesting kind of view. Yeah, but hmm,
In a world of a lot more like remote work, telework type stuff, I can actually see
yeah,
this being more beneficial, because like there's obviously like there's jobs that you can't telework. So like grocery stores, you can't really telework that. Deliveries, you can't really telework that. Um, Restaurants, etc. But like, my job, shit, I telework all the time. You know, um, and it's kind of one of these things where it's like, if you're catering to that type of people, and you're able to also bring in people who are, gonna be able to afford to live there, in the other jobs that can't telework, um, I think that's gonna be their challenge. Because like, not to throw shade at Saudi Arabia, but like, the working class, um, needs needs to be cared for.
well, that's the thing, right? It is a case of it's a an interesting and amazing looking idea and sort of conceptually, from the conceptual images and stuff like that. Like it looks amazing. It looks super futuristic but you have to wonder how many, as you say, like how rich do you have to be to live there? And if it's really only for the ultra rich, then, you know, why build it the way or why have it the way that you have it? Like when the ultra rich can just do most of that anyway and not have to go and live, like, do you know what I mean? Like the ultra rich can can get a lot of that done, and fashion the way that they want to live, however they want to live. If this is to cater for ultra rich, then that's kind of almost pointless.
And it's like, so it's
But
designed to have 9 million people living there. So the
so it's clearly not the ultra rich, like
yeah,
if but
like at
like
that point, you have to have, you know you have to have a wide variety of people. Like, it's one thing to be like, oh, on a private island with 200 people, you're still gonna have the guy who cleans the toilets. you know uh, Not saying that that's a bad job, but probably doesn't make as much as the CEO does, being totally honest there. you know
in a
but
in
it's,
a in a world where your job, the you get paid for doing jobs that are critical for the continuation of a high quality of life, and being paid, um, for you know essentially for maintaining that job and being able to allow the community to maintain that high quality of life. It'd be great if, people like janitors would actually get paid a decent amount of money rather than, be at the bottom of the fucking payroll. But yeah,
Mhm. And the
Yes.
other side of this is that they need to make sure that they think about everything. So like
Oh
the
yeah.
Burj Khalifa is a perfect example of this. It's a massive superstructure. I believe it's still the tallest building on the planet. Um, but it's not hooked up to a sewage system. Like, talk about a
So,
giant fucking whoopsie. They have to truck out shit, literally, every
but
day.
and that's what I'm talking about. It's like,
Yeah,
these superstructures are made with this, not with an idea of like, holistic approach to life, but just as a statement of, basically like flopping your dick on the table and going, I have the biggest, so fuck you all.
yeah,
Um, and this, as grandiose as it looks, kind of feels a bit like that as well, because you look at some of the imagery here, and it's like, well, it's all very nice and well, but like, is it all going to last 6 months in? Like, are those trees going to last 6 months in? Like, just
hmm,
because it seems to be some kind of like amalgamation of, high tech and, naturalistic um, sort of like like a smashing between of the natural world and the high tech world.
hmm,
And that only really works if you have an absolute shit ton of, of people to maintain it.
hmm. There's
And
there's
so you
gonna
best
need to
have,
be a lot of people. A lot of people there are just gonna be there to like maintain the city. Which I mean, that's the same in most cities, but this is kind of turning
nah.
the dial to
I mean,
11.
you don't have trunks of trees growing through, like, yeah, fair enough. You have, everybody knows that there's trees in the middle of cities and stuff like that, but generally you tend to have, areas where ground is marked up for that kind of thing, and the sort of ecosystems that are able to sort of maintain that sort of stuff are kept, or at least sort of, you know at least there's a nod to it. But like, some of the imagery on this is just like devoid of that. So it's like, you're going to need to have people there maintaining the sort of like the ecological kind of requirements for all of this, all of um the the natural kind of side of things, uh in all of this imagery. And I just feel like it's it's just been designed to look cool, not designed to actually function. In very much the same way as you said, the Burj Khalifa looks fucking amazing. It is the tallest thing made by man in the world. Yet it doesn't even have a functional, sewage system. It's like the most monumental, um, like, you know, just complete brain fart. Like, yeah, I don't know. It feels like a crazy thing that's, some super rich madman has thought up, on the weekend, and just decided to throw it to an advertisement company to some degree. I'm sorry if that sounds really like, really harsh, but yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, the thing is, if they went through and was basically, there was a, the person who was designing, or the person who was, had who was was inspired to put money into this project, wanted it to be, to to showcase the city of the future, which was maintainable, and was, had systems that, basically balance the sort of the form and function of a living city with, with natural ecosystems and all that kind of stuff. Then fair enough. But I've seen a few kind of things with that, like, when people design tower blocks to, to function with natural light rather than with an absolute like cacophony of incandescent light, and in illumination, that kind of stuff. To maintain cooler temperature inside without having to use naturally, without having to use expensive and always on AC systems and that kind of stuff. Like that sort of stuff. Yeah, fair enough. I'd be into sort of checking that stuff out, because that's something that is could be extremely useful in the near future.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like I think it's I think it's an interesting project, but I'm not sure like the follow on impacts on it. Like I hope that they do more planning before they
Yeah, yeah,
actually
very
do
much
it.
so. So in other random news, the UK got into the finals of the Women's UEFA, which is cool. Very rare that the UK kind of actually gets to do this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I was seeing that in the Imperium Discord. There's somebody pinged that, I think.
Yeah, there's going to be a match. The finals are on Sunday, so there's going to be a match, and we're going to be like having drinks and watching it together. Be like a watch party, the kind of sort of thing. But there should be some interesting times. And if it goes to penalties, I'm going to cringe, because like the Britain is, when it comes to football, Britain is just, oh Christ, we have such a run of bad luck when it comes to penalties at major sporting events, major football events, really. Like, yeah, it never goes well. Sorry, I am kind of here, but kind of not, because I'm like sorting out stuff, and I'll
You
be
need to
having
turn
a
your
sip.
camera on, by the way.
I know, I know. I'm in the process of doing things, and then hearing you and coming back and having a conversation, and then I hear like nothing, and then I have to come back and talk while not doing stuff.
Yeah. Um, see what else is there. Um, I had a couple of topics that I had in mind, and completely whiffing on them because I didn't put them in the patch notes. Um, oh, here we go. I'm gonna send this over to my. So RuneScape, of all things, is the topic that I want to hit on here. Um, RuneScape and Unreal 5. If I can find, there it is. So RuneScape's Unreal 5 remake is actually pretty good. Like, was not expecting this. This came up on one of my feeds, and basically like I don't think this is actually official. I think it's a player player generated. but basically concepting RuneScape uh, in the Unreal 5 engine, and just like how bonkers crazy good this is. Like, I think we're approaching the parody that is um, that is almost too good of graphics. And I think Unreal 5 is just incredible for an engine. So I thought that was pretty cool. I felt like people should see that. Um, Obviously, RuneScape. I don't believe RuneScape is actually going to get a remake in the Unreal 5 engine, but um, it could be done. You and frankly, like as people show there, like it wouldn't actually be all that difficult. Um, you know, like the assets are relatively easy. Sorry. Um, so yeah, got a whole bunch of stuff. The apologies, I keep going to my phone because I've got a bunch of tabs open that have like all of the different stuff. Um, so let's talk about teleworking. Uh, there's a couple of interesting kind of movements happening out there when it comes to like remote work, telework, uh, and like the lack of being in the office also creates this opportunity of getting your work done, getting all of the expectations that the company has of you, and then having the rest of the time for yourself. Um, and there's one thing that I heard of recently, and this is related somewhat to it, but um, it's also related to like how people are starting to leave jobs. Uh, and it's referred one the this new concept is referred to as silent quitting, which basically is the the drive to no longer go above and beyond. It's now what is expected of me. Do that until I can find another job. Um, and it's kind of this interesting shift in how people see work. And there's been because there's like right now there's a ton of places that are starting the return to the office, and their employees are like, no, rather not. Go find somewhere that actually learned something over the last couple of years. Because most office jobs can be done remotely. There are some that can't. Uh, like obviously, like if you work classified stuff for the government, you're probably still going to have to go into a skiff. Like that's just is what it is. Um, you know,
Yeah.
but if you're working like your standard 9 to 5, accounting job, and all you really do is punch in numbers into spreadsheets, then you really don't need to go into the office for anything. And there's an element from like a supervisory standpoint that people are XYO, good to see you. People are looking at it and going, why spend the time going into the office? Why spend the uh, why spend that added effort uh, when I can work from home? I can get as much, if not more, done in less time without the distractions of the office, and I don't have to burn 45 minutes in the morning, 45 minutes at night on the commute. You know, it just doesn't it doesn't make sense in a lot of cases. Now, from a supervisor perspective, there's this thought that you should come back into the office because it's easier for me to see if you're working or not, and I'll know if I can give you more work. Well, you know, the counter to that is, well, if you give me stuff to do and I finish it on time and you're happy with it being on time, uh, you know, but it only took me half the amount of time that you think it did, is that okay? You know, and there's a lot of these things are like ethical questions, but at the same time, there's a measure of, you know, we shouldn't be burning people out in their jobs. So, you know, is as long as the employee is doing everything in their power to make the company happy and like meeting all of the expectations that are set for them, then as a supervisor, why would you care if they're actually doing 8 hours worth of work? Like let's say like most of my job, for instance, is you know a lot of automation. I automate dashboards, automate data sets, and do a lot of data type work. Well, if I can accomplish that in half the time, I'm not saying that I should sit at home doing nothing for that other time, but you do an analysis, you say, okay, hey, what's your actual workload? And if I come back and say, oh, I've only got 45 minutes a day worth of work, then yeah, like you can totally turf other projects, and it comes into this thing of you can give people more to do, and if they tell you, hey, this isn't going to work, I don't have time to do this because I'm working on this other thing, then they're busy. There are ways in a virtual environment to make it work. you know like versus some people
Yeah.
have this mentality that oh yeah, work should you should put everything you possibly can into work, and there you
Mm.
should always have 100% effort. And it's like,
So
well, if my 100% effort is 5 times the guy next to me, and the expectations for the position are the same between the two of us, and I get my work done 5 times faster, why would I uh, why would I try and do more if there's no opportunity for more pay? you know uh,
yeah, so the way I kind of see this is a lot of, so you see it very much uh when it comes to job listings and stuff like that, right?
mhm,
Um, you know, typically people fill out job listings because they go to, they go and find a job that they want to do. The job has various different qualifications and, the requirements to fill that particular role, right? And the relevant experience that they request from you, that kind of thing. So clearly, it is a performant. It is a task based, requirement for you to do, for you to fulfill, right?
mhm,
It is not a case of, come have an interview and we'll see if we can fit you into our work, into our sort of like our work paradigm, that kind of thing. Like they don't go in, they don't interview you and go, okay, well you're an extremely efficient worker, so we'll be able to give you this much pay per hour or this much pay per week or month or per annum kind of thing. Um, so when you're fulfilling a task based uh, sort of task based sort of employment request, then yeah, like if you can get it done in half the time as the person next to you who's doing the same thing, you should be able to do whatever the hell you like with the rest of the time, because you're not being paid for your capabilities, your maximum capabilities throughout an allotted time period. You're being paid to complete tasks, related to the job that you have been employed for. Like,
Mhm.
to me,
So
that's what makes sense.
here's where things get challenging. So I talked earlier that I do a lot of automation, and there's been some stories that have gone around, on TikTok and other places where, uh, specifically like data entry type jobs, that are
Yeah,
possible to be automated. If you know what you're doing.
yeah, yeah.
An individual worked for a company for 5 years. Within the first month of working for the company, he identified that this could easily be automated, went to Fiverr, paid somebody, $150 to develop the code to automate it, and then sat there for the next 5 years, not actually doing any physical work, just checking the results of the automated system that he'd built out.
Yeah,
And
that's pretty
when
good.
other people kind of challenged him on this, or caught up to his speed, he maintained the
They were
system
angry about it.
at a, like, kept it even with his other people, so like wasn't running the software at 100%, but always kept
Yeah,
himself in front of the pack uh, in terms of like
capable.
the amount of work that he was producing,
Yeah, his performance,
and he would
but
vary it
technically.
to make it look like, hey, it's a natural process. So
Hmm.
the question at that point is, if the company is entirely happy with your performance to the point where they're looking to promote you, they're looking to do all these other things, you know, and you really haven't done anything for them in terms of like actual work output. Like the individual basically said, I basically just sat and watched Netflix for 5 years, and got paid for it. And it was a nighttime job, so he never had to go into the office, and they were happy with his work. So why why should he feel bad about this? And he, at the same time, he accepted a daytime job at another company. So he was
Did he automate
basically
that?
letting his computer overnight and waking up, a couple hours early to check the results in the morning, making sure that
Hmm.
nothing went wrong. And he was like, after 5 years, nothing goes wrong. Like it's completely ironed out process. Um, and he's turning around,
Barring
pulling a
any
paycheck
absolute.
from two different
Yeah.
companies. And the other company was something he actually wanted to do. But this data entry job was paying him $80,000 a year to basically you know do nothing.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah,
You
not
know,
bad. Yeah, like it reminds me a little bit of like a program that I watched where somebody realized how much time he spent in Zoom meetings, just doing things and discussing things, and like he realized that he could automate it completely, even to the point where if he had to actually, make a presentation in a Zoom call about a certain thing, he could essentially pre-record that, and then at the certain kind of moment, like he could just literally press play on it, and it would, he would automate both him in the Zoom call, face to face. It's not like just audio. It was like, it had, audio and visual sort of thing. So he had a green screen and all that kind of stuff. But like everything there basically automated his Zoom meeting calls, including presentations on the Zoom meeting calls, for like I think it was like a week or 2 weeks sort of thing. And people didn't realize until he, eventually came out with the fact that he's been automating his Zoom meeting calls for the past 2 weeks, and people were just gobsmacked. They were stunned about it. But yeah, like being able to automate, like if you can do that stuff, like why not? Like uh, I don't see the issue with it. If people have been doing it the hard way for numbers of years, and they haven't seen a way around it, or haven't been able to figure out or realize that it is possible to automate it in some way, shape, or form, then that's on them. That isn't on the other guy who did automate it. Like if his work is exemplary, out of it, then fair enough. Like, what's
Mhm.
the issue?
And that's the ethical question of,
The ethical question
do
is
I
just,
disclose the fact that I have this software that can do my job, or do I reap the benefits of having innovated the position, um, and you know like the employer's happy because the work's getting done at a great pace,
mhm,
and you're the highest performing person out of all of them. Well,
yeah.
you could, by just have it selling this code to your company, get rid of the 10 people that normally do that data entry job, and save the company a lot of money,
Yeah, but
or
like
not.
from an ethics kind of perspective, like, have you just caused the unemployment of three people, and potentially the, the wealth insecurity of potentially three families? Like, what you want to do there is you want to be able to better, w- make the process, or whatever is going on in the company more efficient. But then you take those people whose jobs are now being automated, and you retrain them in areas which likely won't be automated, or at least in the near future. um and proceed from there. But the issue is that a lot of companies see efficiency as a way of cutting costs, rather than being able to boost output, or boost sort of production
Yeah.
quantity, that kind of thing. So it's just, you know if these sorts of things end up with people basically being unemployed, then it's a real, it's not the way that it should be. Because the way that it should be is striving to be to be a leading part of your nation's capability of being able to create a highly efficient industry, whatever industry that you're in, right?
Mhm.
China's been able to do it. Taiwan does it. Like, your country should be able to do it too. And if the employer that you're employed with basically looks at the automation of a job as a way of basically throwing people out into the street, then that company does not, um, it's not, the company and the people running that company are not worth you spending, or you selling that automated software or automated process, to, essentially.
Mhm. So,
Because,
in
you
the
know
example that I had, the guy went out, used his own money, got somebody on Fiverr off hours, and they
mm,
developed the code external. So there's no liability to the company necessarily, but you know, um, if you were using work time, technically the company may have rights to the IP. However, you don't have to
mm,
disclose until you leave that it exists. Like that's one of the challenges when it comes to that, is that, like, you do have to leave behind your work product in most office job, like in most cases there. That said, like, the like handy tricks in code base type stuff, you
mm,
know generally, like, you're not necessarily, like, depending on how, like, the job that you have, you might not be able to, you might not be allowed to keep it. But at the same time, you're
mm,
going to have to disclose the code base that you have, and that you developed on the clock. um, but so
yeah, yeah.
let's go even deeper into this. And one of the expectations that's come out in the work from home thing is availability. So, you
Oh,
know
yeah, no, I know you have an
uh,
anecdote, or not an
so
anecdote, but like
the
a
perfect example of
thing
this
for
is
this.
Microsoft Teams and keeping the dot green.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because many employers, and I've had some in the past where, I used to be able to telework like once a week, at most, or once every 2 weeks, I'd get a day where I could telework, and supervisors would be watching like a hawk for that little dot to turn yellow. And if it ever turned yellow, they would message you, "Hey, where are you? Why aren't you at your computer? You've been away for 10 minutes." It's like it's taking a dump. Like give me a break here. Like it's
Jesus.
lunchtime. Let me go. Like, do you want me to put lunch on the calendar? Like, you know, and this is one of those things where it's like people are, like if I have my phone on me, my work phone with me at all times. Like for those that don't know, I work in emergency management, so like me having my work phone on me is a given. I'm hardly ever without it, even on vacations. Generally, it's with me because there are expectations that go beyond my time off. That said, you know there are ways that people have generated, like the mouse wheel mover thing that it's basically just a USB device that just constantly moves your mouse around uh, to prevent one, your computer from logging out, but two, the actual like the dot stays green. And
Yeah.
you know if you here's the difference: if you are available, you're getting all of your work done, and you are meeting all of the expectations, is being able to get up and do other things while still being actively responding. I'm not saying like, I'm going to take 15, I'm not going to take like 30 minutes to go prep dinner, while I'm on the clock. But,
Yeah.
if I'm going to go grab a snack, or, and eat a snack, take a break, I don't want to get bitched at, so is it ethical to trick your boss into thinking you're always at your computer when the reality is, if they send you a message, you're going to respond within a minute or two anyways, because you're still
So
present. You're just not necessarily present at your computer, and you're just trying to get your boss off your back.
so there is there's some interesting scenarios that you can play out to this, because if the if the from a management perspective, if they are constantly berating people for not being at their desk, or not responding fast enough, because or not being or being or considered to be away from the computer just because of a notification, or just because of an idle time um, notifier in some way, shape, or form. Um, if that is forcing people to either install or to attach devices that mimic you being at the computer, just to not have that aggravation each day, that presents and this is a very real thing, right? This presents a vulnerability in the company's infrastructure, the company's IT services, because now you have people bringing in third-party peripherals, potentially third-party software that has not been vetted in some way, shape, or form, just to get outside of the aggravation of uh, some power plays of executives or of mid-level managers, and can end up basically compromising the security of the company's IT infrastructure, and potentially the records of millions of customers,
Mm-hmm. Well, and
the
beyond
sensitive data
beyond
of millions
that,
of customers.
the so these mouse clickers, these mouse movers and stuff like that. Like even if you
Yeah.
powered them off of a USB like outlet, just via power, not actually plugged into your computer, the additional challenge there is that your computer is staying logged in whether you're
Hmm.
present or not.
Yeah.
So like, let's say the individual leaves it on while they leave for lunch, somebody breaks into their apartment, you know all of a sudden their work computer is unlocked and actively, accessible.
Yeah.
So like there is definitely security sides to it that are, that are concerning. You know, but
Yeah.
it really goes down to the level of, if you're going to piss off your employees to the point where they start finding ways to be less honest with you about, like how often I touch my computer. Because like, let's say I get on a phone call and it's a 2 hour long phone call. My computer's going to say I've been away for 2 hours, you know, but
Yeah.
I'm still working.
Hmm.
I'm still in a telework environment, but
Yeah. Yeah.
to some supervisors, that's not acceptable.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
you end up doing like a number of different things. Like it's a combination of, you want to keep your computer logged in while you're sitting there, uh, but you may not be actively touching your computer. You may be conversing. Like, for instance, since this topic started, I haven't actually touched my computer. I haven't scrolled websites. I
Yeah.
haven't done anything. You know, uh,
Yeah.
but if I was at work, we've been on this topic for 15 minutes. It would say I'm away from my computer.
Yeah, exactly.
Despite the fact that I have 15 things open and I'm actively looking at it, and actively
Now,
streaming. Like, you know,
yeah, and I do want to sort of, so from a, I don't want to label this particular point, but I do want to sort of, you know, mention this because it is uh, like a blossoming threat when it comes to IT security, and that is with regards to air gapped or sort of PCs that are highly secure because they cannot be attached to the outside world or that kind of thing, right? You can still pull information from that PC depending on certain possible kind of uh, potential things. Essentially, any wire that is basically utilized inside of a PC could potentially be utilized as an aerial to basically pick up information being broadcasted outside of it. So even though it is air gapped, you could technically be leaking information out because of the relative components inside of the computer. This is one way that uh, security like IT security professionals have found is basically being used by um, state spy agencies and that kind of thing. Obviously, if you work at a 7-Eleven or whatever, and you're updating stock pricing or whatever, you're not going to be the target for China's like spying agency in any way, shape, or form in this kind of like sophisticated attack. But this kind of technology always has a periodicity where it trickles down into sort of like the more mundane hackers and that kind of stuff. Like you never saw massive denial or DDoS attacks like way back in the day being done by the kid down the block. It was something that was done only by state actors. But now you have like hacker groups that are able to do that kind of thing. You have like sometimes even individuals that are able to do this. Same with all different various different forms of attacking a computer system. Obviously they're all felonies, you should never do them. But you have to be aware about the fact that like these things are possible, and when they're developed by large state actors and intelligence services, like yeah, they're not in circulation being done by Joe Schmo here, there, and everywhere. But eventually, over the course of time, that technology will be in available to people to potentially do that. So understand that even if your stuff is air gapped, it's not 100% secure.
mhm. There's also some challenges with air gapped computers using cheaper than normal cheaper than normal SATA cables that
Yes.
act as a Wi-Fi antenna
Yeah, yeah, that kind of
because
stuff.
they've been deliberately developed for the purpose of hacking computers that should not be hackable. So
Yeah.
some interesting stuff on the tech side. That said, we've just passed 7 o'clock, so we're gonna kick it into our intro video. We'll see you guys on the other side, and we're gonna start off with some New World news because obviously there is a ton to cover. So we'll
Oh yeah.
see you on the other side. All right, welcome everybody to the NWO show, your source for all things, at least on 3 different MMOs. Uh, you know, it is kind of a crazy week this week. We have a major patch coming for major patch, major release for New World. We've got a major release for Star Citizen, and some stuff has happened in Lost Ark. So, as we always do,
Mm.
let's start with where we were last week, so we can see how far we've come.
Yes, indeed. So last week. Basically, in anticipation of the PTR patch going live at some point, and obviously we know what that point is now. AGS last week were releasing. At least last week had released a fishing guide that included aspects of the Summer Medley Fair event in it, which is as basically as the lore surrounding the event like has its like origins, its genesis in what is the Eternum Sturgeon. Uh, there was, so these sorts of things coming out and hinting to the fact that, hinting to things that are in the update, it is typically a good sign that the update is, very, very soon to come. But yeah, there was also an kind of like quite an artsy article about the design of the Summer Medley Fair villages, that kind of thing, which is quite a cool thing to check out. Yeah, and regarding the Medley Fair, like the PTR patch had basically been revised to had the fourth revision, I think it was. Um, so that's been progressing as such. Community wise, people have been making their voices heard about like shell companies. We kind of like we delved into what a shell company is and how it operates in the show, and how it's basically suppressing more inclusive territorial gameplay, especially considering the wealth disparity between some player groups, or between various different player groups, and just the general sort of like the community as a lot in large, or at large, sorry. But yeah, um, there's also been some players have been lamenting about how the server blocks on new and this like yeah. So the server blocks for new players and transferring players have basically been like screwing over player groups and keeping them fragmented over different servers, despite those low player counts. Reddit wise, we also saw some good sort of collated info about Brimstone Sands, and we had a heads up on the meta shift that is going to potentially happen when the summer patch hits. So yeah, that was New World news from last week as such. Do you wanna jump into Lost Ark news from last
Yeah.
week?
Uh,
Yeah.
so Uh, Unlike this week, the New World and Star Citizen this week, of course, have their major patch. Last week, Lost Ark had their major patch. The Spells and Spades update officially launched with the new difficulty scaling for the Voltan Legion raid, the new Arcanist class, and a host of new ways to maximize your character to 1370 gear score, which is very welcomed by the community. Uh, some additional summer events with the Maharaka Festival and the Water Pop Arena for some of the summer fun type stuff. I think people were expecting that last month, and then uh, it was kind of a surprise to get basically two different summer events,
Yeah,
one
there's
a
some like
month.
water pistol action and stuff going on
Mhm.
with that, right? Yeah,
Like it's
that's
actually
cool.
it's actually pretty fun. And then on top of this, events are coming to help player progression, including the Punica Power Pass that released with it. So if you have a tier 3 character, you instantly get a way to get another tier 3 character. Doesn't have to be the new class, but the new class is quite fun. And the Hyper Express event, which takes a 1302 character and through side missions and different things, will help you rapidly get them to 1370. Um,
Nice.
so basically accelerating a character through tier 3 into kind of the end game content. Abyssal dungeons also get a modification in the challenged variant, with more rewarding options akin to the other challenge offerings for the other game modes. So basically, some solid stuff, new content, more difficult content, and of course, with difficulty comes more rewards. And that brings us over to Star Citizen.
Yeah. So for Star Citizen, the PTU patch revisions went uh, from M to P. So M, N, O, and P. We have more revisions this week, but last week the revision O was released to basically all backers, everybody who has a Star Citizen paid account as such, or like game package. Chris Roberts had a video on I think it was Twitter, mentioning basically, talking about certain things, and mentioning about the fact that the patch that the patch it was likely to hit in about 7 to 10 days from last week. All things uh, all things looking good in that regard. We had roadmap updates and a monthly roadmap roundup as well. Yeah, not AGS. CIG has this propensity to do monthly like roundups of various different things, which is like really cool because you get a better sort of perspective as to how the month has kind of shifted in, especially when it comes to roadmaps and how they've reprioritized various different things as the month has progressed. And yeah, so that's really cool to see. Star Citizen hit 4 million active, well, not active accounts, but 4 million accounts at this point in time. Um, and the devs kind of confirms that there's going to be an increase in server cap in the PTU. More info on that this week because there's been some confirmations of some stuff, and we'll get to that at the relevant section this week. We also had a great laugh at the when we kind of spotlighted worst source of advices, Star Citizen Buyer's Guide flowchart. It is an amazing chart, flowchart. You need to see it, especially if you've purchased ships and large ships as well, especially large ships. So definitely check that out. And the Star Citizen versus Eve kind of crossover community like Lego event called Dubbed Battle of the Bricks was to happen I think it was on the Friday of that week. Or I think it was the Friday or maybe the Saturday. I'm not entirely certain when it was. I think it was the Friday. I'm sure it was the Friday. And Star Citizen Live was basically all about the upcoming patch on 3.17, basically the 3.17.2 patch, basically giving you the ins and outs of it. But yeah, the Star Citizen Live, I Star Citizen Live this week has basically, well, Star Citizen Live this week. I'm not sure what the Star Citizen Live this week. Well, like last week, I think, the last week's one was kind of like rolled into the Battle of the Bricks to some
Mhm.
extent. But yeah, that was basically, that's essentially the roundup of last week's show. And yeah, we have a full show and a lot of stuff to talk about when it comes
Yes.
to New World, uh, Lost Ark, and Star Citizen. So
Yes. One of the
let's
things we want to
get
hit
into it.
on early here is stating
Yeah.
we are kind of rebooting our YouTube channel.
Oh
You know,
yes,
and
yes.
and one of the things that we released, and we'll play it at the end of the video or at the end of the stream tonight, is a clip where we did some investigative reporting on the finances of CIG, which is the developers of Star Citizen and EVE Online, which had some conclusions in it that managed to piss off a number of people in the EVE Online community. Um, you know,
The kind of TLDR, it doesn't look too rosy on Eve Online as such, but you the watching it like at the end of the show, like you understand exactly why.
oh,
So yeah.
it's not meant to be a hit piece on EVE Online, but management for CCP games needs some changes. That's for sure.
They need to get their arse into gear, as it were. Yeah.
Yes. So that said, New World.
hmm
Uh, New World this week. The big news right up front here is the summer medley fair update is officially launching tomorrow morning. So for those in the US, it's basically going to be done by the time you get to work in the morning. Um, and for anybody in Europe, it's basically going to be done like a little afternoon.
Yeah, it should be done sort of
Uh,
mid afternoon, or for people who are up as late as I am, yeah, it'll be done, just after you've had breakfast.
so naturally, this is going to come with a bunch of big changes. Over the last few weeks, we've covered the PTR patch notes, so we're not going to like super in depth cover everything that has changed. If you would like to take a look at all of the changes, it is not a short list of changes. The link is
It's
in chat.
definitely not.
And I would highly recommend taking a look because there are going to be many things that are different after this
Yeah,
patch.
yeah,
Um,
and we did mention, like, in the sort of the roundup of last week, that there was some conversations going on in Reddit regarding meta shifts when the summer patch hits. So understand that certain things have been mixed up and been sort of shaken up in terms of in terms of perks and in terms of perk strength and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, this patch is going to hit, and it's going to change a lot of things. It's going to shift a lot of things. So you know, be very uh, uh, be on notice. I think that's the phrase that I think we should be on notice that things are going to change. Be on notice that maybe certain people are going to be hitting a lot harder, or tanking a lot better with builds that seem to not be what was previously best in slot. And we'll see how this lands. Yeah, it'll be interesting. But in
yes.
terms of like, so A's, like, what kind of like stuff coming in the summer medley fair, like at least from the patch notes and stuff like that we see, I'll take your fancy, as it were.
So the big ticket items, obviously the summer medley fair event itself, including new quests, new buildables, new fish to catch and mount, new tokens to collect and rewards to gain off of that system. There are now 5 instruments being added to the game, which I think that's like the instruments and the like Guitar Hero esque, playing system.
Yeah,
is actually pretty cool. The five
It is
instruments are
cool,
the
yeah.
guitar, the mandolin, the upright bass, the drums, and the Azoth flute.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
there's a
I
number of
love
reasons
the
to use these, and they like basically doing
yeah.
these and doing them well, doing like performing the songs well will give a pretty substantial buff or several different types of buffs. So there's a benefit there, and tipping people that are doing these, um, basically tipping people that are performing the songs will enable you to get the buff from them. So
Yeah, yeah.
there's
Don't be tossing a coin to your Witcher. Toss a coin to the bard instead. He'll actually give you the buff.
yes.
Just saying.
So that's a pretty big change. Additionally, Barnacles and Black Powder Expedition against
Mm,
Admiral Black Powder it's quite the it's quite the expedition. I think it's one of the more unique ones. There's a lot of new mechanics in there. The boss fights are incredibly fun. So I would highly recommend checking that out. The Expedition Group Finder will enable you to also do that a lot easier. Now you'll be able to find groups by instead of just going in chat, going, "Hey, I'd like to join a group." Now it's actually a system that you can join from anywhere. Hey, I want to, I'm looking for X group, group of casuals that just want to run this dungeon. And you can look for a specific type. So, like if you're down a healer, you can say the group still needs a healer, and it makes it easier for people to kind of find open groups. Um, this is
yeah.
also followed by the expedition tuning orb removal. You will no longer need a tuning orb to go into any expedition. You
Yeah.
will still need the tuning orbs to go into the arena fights against um, like the Spriggans, but that's different. The actual expeditions, though, those they're removing that, and you will no longer be able to craft tuning orbs. There are other things and other reasons to have um, 200 stone cutting, so don't feel like you
Mhm.
ground that for no reason.
Yeah.
Um,
Because there's still going to be there's obviously still going to be mutated expeditions. So you're going to have there's a method for you to be able to to trigger a mutated expedition. So don't worry about that. Like that's kind of like all sort of like part and parcel of the system that also uh, gives utility back to people who have that gem cutting and stone cutting kind of skills and that kind of stuff. So don't worry about it. You guys still have like things that you do that is useful to the community and useful to other people. Yeah,
yeah. Um, the expedition group finder is coming out with this, by the way. Just
yeah,
getting the
yeah.
thing here.
hmm I like that. I think in a game uh, in something like New World, it is kind of like a very useful sort of thing, especially for people who don't have, are not part of like large clans and that kind of thing, where you have like a bunch of people who are online all the time to be able to, to jump in and do an expedition. And because sometimes getting an expedition together via the global chat is not exactly, or one of the chat channels isn't exactly the best or the most efficient way of doing things. And some people kind of say that, like, when a sort of similar thing kind of happened in WoW, like a lot of conversational sort of stuff disappeared from the game. I think, in all honesty, with the means and the tech that's available for people to be able to get in touch with each other over the internet, whilst doing various different things while playing games and stuff, it's advanced so much since back then that, like, I think having an expedition group finder, or some kind of dungeon finder to pull people together who want to do those sorts of things. I don't think it's going to be a big issue whatsoever. Not in the way that it was back in World of Warcraft.
Yeah. Oh, so on a different side of things, they have
Yeah.
instanced wars. So prior to
Mm.
this, wars used to basically happen in a geo-fenced, like if you've ever been to the edge of the map and you see the white wall, that normally goes up for wars around the area that the war is happening. They've
Yeah.
instanced wars, which means they're taking those players and putting them off onto their own server for the fight, and then bringing them back at the end of the fight, so the area will still be available for people to use. And this is kind of a prelude from the server side to enable things like skirmishes, otherwise known as casual wars. So like that's basically prepping things for the regional wide queues,
Yeah,
and
I
all
was going
that.
to
So
say.
like it's really a solid advancement, and it's going to mean that wars run smoother. Which I would
Mhm.
argue that wars at this point are basically in the best condition they've ever been in. Um, so yeah, moving on from there, the perk rebalance. This is going to be the meta ground shift here. Everything
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was best in slot might not be best in slot after this.
yeah. And
Just about
there
every perk
was
got changed.
yeah, and there's so many changes here that like trying to go through it and trying to basically say pick out like the best versus the worst versus like what could potentially be the go-to meta kind of builds and this that, and the other. It's it's a minefield, right? It's possible that you could think that you're onto the meta build for the for the expansion or for the update, but it might not be the case. So it's one of those things that you're just going to have to watch play out, see how the chips kind of lay, how they fall, and see where we're at on that. But expect a lot of unexpected, I guess.
Yes. That said, now if you roll equipment and perks that you don't like, the new salvage system called Perfect Salvage basically allows a chance every time you salvage a piece of equipment for a perfect salvage, which will result in research materials such as weapon scraps that can be used to gain crafting trade skill experience. It may drop special orbs that can be converted into gypsum casts uh, that bypass the normal daily limit. Hint, hint. Uh, and materials to fabricate special items. So, for instance, legendary type stuff could drop that makes it much easier to develop better equipment. Um, Now, going all the way back to launch, this becomes a pretty important one, and you can see it over the last few patches. They're reducing XP required for leveling for gathering, refining, and crafting skills by about 20%. Um,
Which when you're
Basically,
talking about when you're talking about cutting trees and when you're talking about like doing like furnishing and stuff like that, is a monumental amount of XP that they're cutting out. To be honest,
yes.
yeah,
Now, I'll be the first one to say they probably should have done the double XP event after that change, but
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
that said, at least it was times 2 XP, which technically is still faster than the 20% less. So, uh,
No, that is true.
yeah.
You're right there.
Um, so, aside from that, mana has a pretty dramatic change. Uh, they're removing the 1 second mana regeneration delay that triggers when mana is consumed.
Oh, that is big. That is
That
actually
is a
pretty
big
big.
change.
Yeah, that is
So
pretty big.
for those
I
that
wonder whether
are
they'll.
using that equipment, that is going to be kind of a pretty solid quality of life change for you.
Yeah, I wonder whether they'll actually ever do that for stamina as well. Because uh,
Stamina's got so
it,
many problems; it's not even funny right now.
well, stamina has issues, and that's because it is you have systems built onto it, kind of, and like that affect it in a variety of different ways. But like, very much in the same way that that mana it is essentially the sort of like the power bar for mages. Stamina is very much the power bar for melee. So. Uh, in a very real sense, if you have a removal of the regeneration delay for mana, to redress that balance for melee, you should have a removal of the 1 second delay for stamina regen as well.
I think the
But then
issue is that
again,
stamina buffs everybody. And it's already got the problem people just rolling away from all damage.
there is that, yeah.
All damage and all crowd
You,
controls
you,
basically.
you'd need to be able to somehow restrict the ability to roll away, to essentially have a free sort of like rolling away from enemies or this, that, and the other, to only occur after a certain period, rather than just, if you have one stamina, you're able to do another roll. Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean?
Oh,
Yeah.
so
Anyway, Outpost Rush, right?
Outpost Rush. Outpost
Yeah.
Rush has a number of changes. For those that are builders like me and you like building your home base, this is a huge change and a giant middle finger to bow users who just
The
like
last.
stacking their damage counter. They have changed the mesh on the protection ward. The ward should now be much more difficult to hit from the outside of the fort walls. So you can't just sit there and plink at it. The only skills and abilities that should be able to hit it are things like the fireball, and those are
Rain
wildly inefficient to actually
Rain of
kill
Arrows
anything.
should be able to do it as well, but
Um,
yeah, those should be super inefficient.
so like that I see is as an absolute huge improvement to Outpost Rush. They fixed an issue that caused
Yeah.
protection wards to prevent the capture points, capture percentage from increasing, uh, and instead reducing it back to 0 when built in middle of a capture. Um, this was kind of a funny thing where if you built it prior to getting 100%, it would oftentimes either get stuck or it would start counting down to a neutral phase.
Oh
Um,
Jesus.
and you would kind of have to have the enemy come in and kill it. Like it wouldn't transfer back to him, but at the same time, if they came in, killed it, they instantly took the capture. So it
Oh,
was very unbalanced.
that is very strange.
In terms of things that finally received a buff in Outpost Rush, the repeater turret damage and overheat the turret damage has been increased by 25%, making them much more relevant, and the
Well, that's
overheat has
good.
been dramatically stemmed off, so you can fire more shots longer without overheating.
That's
Additionally,
really
the
good.
ballista increased its damage by 15%. Hopefully, this is enough to make the siege equipment relevant to actually build, and relevant to like being able to meaningfully defend your base.
Well,
Um,
we'll see with the new perks, right?
yeah, we'll see with the new perks.
Mm.
So this brings us to arenas. Arenas, the big thing is a rework on consumables. So initially, when you went into arenas, they used to give you honing stones, food, potions, and all of that. You will now bring those with you. You will need to prepare and bring what you need with you. When you go in, you can eat your food, use your honing stones and all of that. It will apply the effect, but it does not actually consume the item. So for instance, if you bring in T5 health pots and you use a T5 health pot in there, it will give you the timer and everything as though it was used, but it will not remove that item from your inventory. Meaning,
Yeah.
bring in T5 food all you want, bring in whatever food types you want, bring in the honing stones, bring in whatever other buffs you want to bring in, bring them with you, and you can use them. Obviously they've all got cooldowns, so you can use them when available. But that's a pretty big, meaningful change for arenas. The hope is that change is also going to make it over to OPR, um, which right now is, for me at least, is the number one use of my health pots. Um, because I'm popping them all the time in there. But yeah, aside from this, and we mentioned this earlier, we're not going to cover all of the changes. If you want to see a full list of all of the changes, there's the link. There are hundreds and hundreds of other changes, bug fixes, visual fixes, you name it. There's also information on weapon rebalancing. Some of the stats have been changed and cooldowns have changed. So I think that is also important. I would be
Mhm.
remiss to say, now is a great time to also go take a look at nwdb.info, and start looking
Oh yeah, for
through,
sure.
like what a lot of the new gear is going to be, what a lot of the new perks are going to be, and seeing, what kind of builds you want out of things. It's gonna be pretty crazy. Um, you know, I don't think within the next. I think it's going to take about a month or two to really develop the new meta after this. But
Mhm.
almost everything that is best in slot now probably isn't going to be after this.
Yeah.
So,
One little thing, which has been mentioned by Crown actually in chat as well, which it is sort of buried a little bit in the uh, the content of the Summer Medley Fair update sort of patch notes as such. It is that the Barnacles and Black Powder expedition is going to be released in a week after the release of the update. So you'll be able to do the Barnacles and Black Powder expedition not this Thursday, but next Thursday. And to go with that release of the expedition, the group finder will be released alongside that as well. So yeah, so if you're looking
interesting.
to get together with people with the expedition group finder, gonna have to wait a week. Yeah.
Interesting. I thought they were both coming out today.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
that's
that
what
that was
the
my
that's
that
what
was
the
my
thing
thought.
says.
That's what I thought, but um the actual the actual text specifically says um that basically that the evil within
Oh yeah.
the unlocks 1 week after the release of this update, and the group finder says this feature will release alongside the new Barnacles and Black Powder expedition. So
That's the
yeah,
kind of thing they should put multiple places.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
they definitely should.
like under the group finder thing, they should have put this will release in a week with this, because it
Mm.
gave the impression that, it was
Well,
releasing at the
I
same
think I
time.
think instead of burying it right at the end of it, they should like lead with it and just be like, "Hey guys, like you know,
Yeah,
this will be released, in a week with Barnacles and Black Powder Expedition, but this is what it is," and then go with it. But but yeah, it's kind of buried a little bit to some degree. Thank you very much, Crown, for pointing us at to it, as it were.
interesting. Um,
Hmm.
so from there, AGS has decided that they want to spotlight some positive player feedback on the summer Medley Fair event, um, in an article, which, basically, like, they actually just straight up showcased like the person's name and like their feedback, which is really cool.
Yeah,
Like, it's
yeah,
one, like, hey, like, we actually do read your stuff, and two, like, this is good stuff. Um,
yeah, yeah. I think obviously they're cherry picking uh, community responses from that, so you have to kind of wonder whether that is representative. But I imagine it probably is fairly representative to some degree if they're doing this. Like, otherwise it's gonna it'll be a bit weird if the community responses are this and then it comes out and it's absolutely terrible, right? So that would look really really bad for AGS. But there's a fair amount of good things to be said from the community responses that they've been spotlighting. Nice thing is obviously, as you say, they added the names to it, and obviously they got people to agree to that, at least as far as I know. The names are obviously, player names from the forums. I imagine the feedback has been taken from uh, the New World forums.
mhm. Um, and aside from that, they've showcased a little bit more uh, of the actual, like, systems that are coming out. So like song selection. Um, I should probably turn on the audio for this. Hello.
You might want to turn off the background sound as well. Nice.
So obviously that's a nice change right there.
Mhm.
With our nice new system, I should say. Um, the collecting tips at the end is ways for people around you to also get the buff, which will be pretty decent ways of buffing your team.
Yeah, you wait, Matt. You wait, Ace. Like we're probably gonna get like copyright striked because of that particular song. We'll probably find that like in some way, shape, or form, it's some like weird esoteric B side from a James Blunt sort of EP that or sort of like single that you released. No, I'm fairly certain. Like like, y- if it's gone through Amazon, then I'm fairly certain it's pretty okay to to stream and all that kind of stuff. So um, yeah, and
Oh, and of course
it's pretty
there's
nice.
there's also like an
I like the
upright
stuff.
bass, and there's all the different instruments, and you can play as a group
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, with
Um,
all different instruments as well. So that's really cool. Yeah,
so
that's
so
really
yeah.
awesome. Like yeah, of the few songs that I've heard, uh, being played and all that kind of stuff, like the quality of like the the songmanship that they've put into the game with the various different songs that you can kind of play about with and play with friends and stuff is pretty high, pretty up there. Like it's some good shit.
Mhm. Um, so one of the other things that's going to be coming in this patch is and was seen in a PTR patch on the 22nd, so last week Friday, um, is an update to the trading post. So a lot of people
Mm,
have complained that the trading post is a bit of a pain in the ass to search through, especially if you're looking for perks and you're looking for specific attributes. A lot of
yes.
those things are now going to be much easier to find. Um, and Let me actually show you guys this. There it is. So you'll be able to say, okay, I can equip this, I can afford it. What the minimum and maximum price is. Um, what the minimum gear score, maximum gear score, and you can select multiple attributes. Like obviously you
That's
can
great.
only select two of them, or unless you want to search for
You
three.
can
But
yeah,
or you can look for I want single attribute only.
that's great.
So this is going to be a much better way to look through the shop and the trading post. Like this is big.
It
Um,
is. That is a much needed additional quality of life um change to the trading post, which is really really cool. One thing as well as well that's been spotted by Crown as well is that certain named enemies all around the map have been updated to level 63 because this is important because level 63s are able to potentially drop 600 gear score items, and so there is a list of new world bosses in all around New Eden, all around Eternum. Sorry, my bad. Slipped into a bit of into a bit of Eve there for some stupid reason. Yeah, some a bunch of world bosses in Eternum that are now going to be hunted mercilessly by the community for those 600 gear score items. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see what else here. The server merges went through. So
Ooh,
to
ooh,
some people are not happy
ooh.
about this. Some people are happy about this. There's very mixed
I
feelings at this point about server merges.
I have my own particular kind of idea, my own particular kind of feelings to server mergers. Sorry, I won't jump on all over this. I'll let you get your bit out. Sorry, mate. My bad.
Um,
Yeah, but
um, so this is kind of a big, obviously in some regions this uh, puts them down to a single server. In some regions.
yes,
In other
yes.
regions, it puts a lot of the servers at pretty close to capacity. If not, there's a couple of them that actually are at, uh, some of the servers are at and have a queue to get into them.
Hmm.
With a bigger patch like this coming, with like the summer release, I don't know that it's the best idea to do a major merge like this on anything other than like the servers that have really low populations. Um,
Yeah, because like merging it all down into a single like I have issues with merging down to a single server because like there is no like if you don't like if you don't like it like the oppressive people that are like could potentially be on a server and around the time when you're sort of trying to do your stuff around the server, like you have nowhere to go. um the only thing that you can potentially do is maybe go to a different region, but that means that you're going to have to start a new character from scratch. And to some people, that kind of level of that setback is something that would more likely drive people away from a game than actually have them continue and make a new character. um there's also those people who are quite angry that they've actually purchased server transfers from AGS to transfer away from, say, a very uh, a very active server that has a lot of um, what you may call colorful and um, uh, uh, brazen characters, maybe. um, Only to find that you've just been merged back into that server that has very abrasive characters or very abrasive players in it. So there's I think there's a lot of people who feel like they've been shortchanged.
yes.
Yeah.
You know, and like I recognize their plight, but at the same time, like AGS also has to do what they have to do when it comes to like server costs. Like spooling up a server to run
I don't think this
for
is a server
100
cost thing.
concurrent. Well, I mean, there's costs associated with running these on separate servers, though.
There is,
You
but
know,
they are Amazon games. It's kind of
it's
understanded that
lesser
like
so, but it's still
a lot
there.
less or so. Yeah,
You
it
know,
is. But it's a lot
and
less or so.
paying for an added server for 100 people when you can merge them into another server, or like 100 concurrent users, and you can merge them into another server and half your costs, like, even if
Yeah,
it's a
but
small cost,
I
it's
don't
still
think it's.
there.
Yeah, it may be a cost and it's still there, but like I think if you're talking about like half the cost of like $10,000 a day to $5,000 a day, yeah, fair enough. But like if you're only talking like $50 or $75, and you're halving it to like $25, $35. Like, you know, it's especially when you're talking about, a company that has had how many years of this in development and and paid the staffing for how many hundreds
But it
of
doesn't mean that they
staffers to
want to
do it.
throw
Like,
money out the window.
yeah, but what I'm saying is, um, you know, I think that's I honestly and genuinely, and I don't want to be, I don't want to sound flippant, or I don't want to like say that, like, you know that that this is not a kind of a point that is rooted in some kind of legitimacy, but I really think that, like, going or arguing the point of server costs to reduce from 2 servers down to 1 server in an entire region, when they've had like 20 or 30 servers per region, at the start of it, like,
Oh, but they also
is,
they also
I
had,
don't think that's, no, that's
30
not a
times
that's
the
not a
player
valid
base.
argument for
Then
me. But yeah,
that's
I
like,
know, I know.
when the player base falls, you can't expect them to still have the same server infrastructure. Like, and
I
on top
understand
of that, the
that.
player
I
experience
understand
on a
that.
server with next to nobody there is terrible. Like,
Well, the thing
imagine
is,
joining a server that
so
can't
that is
feed.
very
Let me talk. Let me
subjective.
talk. Let
That
me
is very
talk. Let me
subjective.
talk.
Okay.
Trying to get into Outpost Rush with 100 people concurrent on your server is fucking impossible, because you have to get
Yes, that
most
is
of the
true.
server into there. You can't get 100 people into a war. You can't get, you're very rarely going to have the ability to do arenas. You're very rarely going to have PvP in the open. Your trading post experience is going to be shit. Sure, you're going to be able to go out and find all of the resources, and if you like playing alone, great. But it's an MMO. It's designed to have a player base there. It's designed to operate closer to the 1,000, 2,000 people online at a time. It's not designed to operate with 150 concurrent users. So like, it's not just a Amazon wanting to watch their bottom line. It's also a player experience is dog shit in a lot of cases, and you lose out on a lot of content that you were just straight up gated from. Even like the world tours that we use to level our characters. That's not
Yeah,
a possibility
that is,
when there's 100
that
people
is
on the
true.
server and you just don't have the number of people to distract the NPCs enough. You know, it's
That is true. Yeah,
yeah.
fair enough. But like, there are also elements of the game which, in a high pop server, you are gated and basically, like, you have no chance in experiencing whatsoever. Like the territorial kind of gameplay, in a high pop server, like, if you're not already in that 625 gear score with best in slot gear, and you already have, a bunch of war experience, like, you're not getting into wars. Like, I'm sorry, you're just not. But in those lower pop servers, you definitely are, because there's not going to be, there's not going to be that many people to be able to uh to 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 block you in doing that kind of stuff. So you actually do have the potential possibility of being able to go around and actually participate in faction, in the sort of faction and territorial warfare that you just literally cannot in high pop servers whatsoever. So, like, there, yes, fair enough, there are elements of the game for sure that are kind of restricted from you, just basically down to low numbers. But in a very real sense, there are areas of the game that are opened up as well.
At the same time, on those lower pop servers, you've got one company that owns most of the map. So, you've got one company that's involved in every war, and you've got, a couple of people on the other side. So it's like, it's not always, it's not all, and it's not the same on every small server. I totally understand that there's small servers that didn't have that as a problem, but there were several that did. Um, and some of the larger servers also have that problem because they've got, shell companies are very much an issue that AGS needs to fix. You know, um, but the small servers have had significant droughts in content because You're not running into people in the wild for open world PvP. You're not, like all of these systems are designed around actually running into people, or having people to help you, being able to get into an expedition.
Well,
If you join a low pop server and you try and run Amarin, good fucking luck getting another few people to do it.
I'll tell you one system that is definitely not designed to for you to be running into people.
The PvP missions.
Yes.
Yeah, the PvP
one
missions
system that
need
you
some
would
serious
think
work.
was actually designed for people to be interacting with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like they're in some ways they're servers that are exceptionally great for leveling your character, because you have access to certain things in large quantities. So like if you want to, go mining or go, like pump up your resource gathering, these low pop servers were great because all of the nodes were still there because there's fuck all people online, but you transfer over to a 2,000 person server and all of a sudden, there's competition for resources,
Yeah.
and like it's a different experience. And I know that there are some people out there that enjoyed playing on low pop servers, uh, but
Well, I
that's
think
where the cost benefit analysis of some of these people are stuck here. Just as some people are stuck being merged back into a server with people they despise, there's also people who are stuck on a server and don't want to pay for a transfer. And there's a decent chunk of them that don't want to pay for a transfer and feel that it's AGS's responsibility to put them on a server that isn't fucking dead.
Well, what about those people who actually did pay for server transfers and transferred
Then
to a
they should be
server and
given
then
another
got
transfer
and then got
opportunity out to another region.
well,
Like,
yeah, and I hope I hope that ends up being the case. But at this particular point in time, like that also comes with the degradation of like the game. With regards to how bad your ping will be to whichever region that you end up getting transferred to. But if there's only a single server on that region, there is no alternative to you that has a good that will have a decent ping. Like and to me that is an issue. To me that is a significantly worrying issue because a lot of people move a lot of people would people move to different servers for various different reasons. If you're paying to actually move to a different server, it's not because you kind of like it's a flight of fancy, because if it's a flight of fancy you could literally just go and make a new character on whichever other server, so long as it's obviously not locked, which there's been situations where certain servers have been locked regardless of their actual server population, even if that server population has been really low for a long period of time. So that's been, that kind of bit has been languishing a little bit with regards to, how AGS have been kind of dealing with servers. But if you're moving away to a different server, not because you hate high pop servers, but because there are people in that server that are kind of that you really detest and that you do not want to be ruining your gameplay or ruining your gameplay experience every single time you jump onto New World, then having that basically being undone after you've even paid AGS to move, like that's a really shitty deal.
oh, and again, that should go to an appeal to the devs, because that's an obvious case of they should either get their money back or get something in return. So when it comes to a new player, I would almost always suggest a high pop server. And the reason for that is this is not a game that you want to learn on your own. This is a game that like community matters. Understanding the meta in the end game is stupid important. Like understanding how to level your character without like wanting to shoot yourself from the grind is also really important. And getting into a company that's active and that's going to be able to help you get through Amarin, get through all of the different expeditions, and get through a lot of the content and kind of help power level you basically. And also when you get to the end, be able to participate in things like Outpost Rush, Wars, Like all of those things are going to be a big thing. Additionally, that's going to wars is going to become something that more people are going to be more active in, um, because there's going to be changes to wars. Like we've been talking about it for quite a while now, that one of the changes that's coming to wars is, part of it came here where they're instancing wars, um, and they're going to be creating kind of a skirmish system, that allows for kind of casual wars. So you create 50 versus 50, and no stakes on the line. Like you're not fighting over the territory. You're just going into an instanced battle, for the sake of it as a skirmish. So
Yeah.
more people are going to be able to participate in that content when the regional queues become a thing. Um,
It
so
would be
that's
interesting to
another big thing.
see.
There's also like they're
Yeah.
gonna do something. They have to do something about shell companies, and they have to
Mm.
do something about the whole like 50 people being in every fucking war all day. Like
Yeah.
that is a huge problem that has to be addressed. So like I'm hoping that this is gonna be this is gonna be something that they can get behind and that works. You know,
I hope so. I hope so. Like, because there
yeah,
is definitely there's definitely population community sentiment, regarding like a lot of these various different things. Like this week, like there's been stuff regarding, the faction system needing to change. Things like, even an AGS dev Shadow Fox kind of basically put out a question to the community about like, about the server mergers and server population, and whether you feel basically how players feel about server pops, full servers versus low pop servers and that kind of stuff. And there's been, yeah, it's that particular one on the forums, like that is the what do you prefer, um uh thread on the forums is, I believe, let me just double check this. I believe is actually that's the second highest thread, second highest active thread on the on the forums for the whole week. So yeah.
yeah. So I mean, there's like there are ups and downs to server merges. In the end, like it's not a clean cut, like it's not an always good thing. Um, but like the combination of unlock, like there has to be a certain amount of people. Like I think we can all agree when it gets down to 100 people on a server, concurrent users on a server, you know, the gameplay experience is shit. Like you're just
It,
not able to do a lot of the content.
yeah,
And at that point,
especially.
there's always a question of like where is the line of where is too low? Is
Yeah.
500 concurrent players enough to get playing OPR, or like if you can consistently get the content, then like I'm not against having servers for for people that like smaller servers. I've
Mm.
also I've also pretty frequently mentioned this. I would love for every 6 months for a server to be added to a region that cannot be merged into, that requires only new characters.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
So like people that want to start fresh away from people, like I think that would be awesome.
I
You
also
know,
feel like the AGS needs to kind of look more at that, you know, unlocking servers. Like I understand the reasonings why they lock servers. Like there's a potential, the potential possibility of, people coming back online and causing significant like server sort of queue times and all that kind of stuff. Has its, has its basis in potential reality if they do come up. But like, it's one of those things where you have to look at the data that you have and determine make an actual good determination as to whether that is realistic or not. And if it's not, then god damn it, unlock those servers so that communities can get back together. Because
yes,
there's a fair amount of communities that, probably until recently, especially with the server mergers, like have been trying to sort of, get together and get merged back into each other and be able to participate with each other. That just haven't, because because of the split, or because of like all of the initial surge and people having to split away into and fragmented into different servers, like yeah, fair enough. They've been kind of slowly coalescing, but like the other kind of aspect of that sort of fragmentation of player groups is you fragment those player groups for long enough, then those player groups start like disappearing, and even if you're merging those player groups into the same or into fewer and fewer servers, like those players aren't there playing anymore, like so they don't know. um so understanding exactly when and where to actually like unlock those servers for people to actually congregate with their friends again, like it's a very important thing, and I think AGS have been dropping the ball on this quite a lot, like over the last 6 to 9 months. So yeah.
Now, one of the other sides of this is language, and I saw this one called out
Yeah,
on the
that's
forums
true.
in a number of
That's true.
places. And frankly, like after playing EVE Online for 10 years, I could give a fuck less, like, whether or not the server has one dedicated language, because like one of the most interesting things that I've ever done is coordinate a multilingual fleet in holding back a massive assault in a system, in like actively dealing with people who only speak in Russian, actively
Yeah.
dealing with people who only speak Chinese, and trying to coordinate the English speaking people. And some of those people are English speaking, as a second language. So trying to get everybody to do the same thing uh can be a fun thing to do. Like, yeah, it can be a pain in the ass as well if there's a language barrier that like people aren't willing to overcome. But Google Translate exists, copy paste exists. Like,
So
there are
Google,
fucking ways
yeah,
around it.
there are
You know,
definitely ways. I'm just saying as well that there are definitely also, in-game elements that help with, with providing data or providing just, non-language based cues as to what the kind of like the leader of the group wants you to do. There's various different ways and means of doing that. I think the role as of the um like commander when it comes to wars is has a hell of a lot of like additional gameplay that you can add to it that would be very interesting from a tactical and from a strategic standpoint when it comes to rallying your troops, making them go certain directions. That would just help, not in terms of being able to almost automate like what players do, because at the end of the day, you don't directly control a player. A player will do what the player wants to do, and if they feel obliged to, carry out your orders and to follow your orders, then you should be able to show them what you want to do, and if you have like at least if commanders of a war have the ability to at least show in some way, shape, or form what they want players to do or they want player squads to do, then it goes a long way to bridging the sort of language barrier between between different communities. You are always going to be able to have player groups that are large enough and they're coordinated enough to be able to coordinate multiple groups and multiple language, multiple ethnicities and languages and that kind of stuff by using out of game comms and all sorts of different things. That's something that we have seen in things like Eve Online. So it is entirely possible. It's just one of the other kind of things that can really help with this is sort of some visual way of showcasing uh, what war commanders want their squads to do.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, like in my eyes, there's really like language is not a reason not to merge servers. Like, it was an
Yeah.
unofficial
Yeah.
thing to begin with, and like if you don't like seeing other languages, like maybe playing an MMO that's based in Europe, probably like on a server in Europe playing an MMO, you're gonna run into people from other cultures. Like that's just how
Yeah,
shit works. Like,
yeah. It
you know,
is. It is.
like it's unfortunate
Any
if that's what you don't like, but like if you don't like that, maybe try just, I don't know, getting the fuck over it. Like, it seems like a
you're
pretty
you're
easy
you're
thing
a
to ignore.
you're a person on the internet in 2020,
Yeah,
2022. So like, I understand that, like, it's
like
you're gonna run
if
into
that's where
people
you
who
draw the
don't speak
line, like you've
English.
got pretty thin skin at that point. Like,
Yeah, and you're not gonna get too far in the modern age.
yeah.
So yeah.
So we kind of hit on this next topic a little bit. The
Mm,
same
mm,
basically 150 people playing in every war.
yeah,
In a combination
yeah,
of politics, in a combination of mercenaries and shell corps, all kinds of bullshit like that. It's a system that needs an overhaul because it's being gated from a lot of the community, uh, and and players are pissed about it. And I would assume that Amazon is
yeah,
doing something about this because they need to.
yeah.
Um,
And doing casual wars like that's an interesting thing. Like, if they are utilizing that tech to be able to, or utilizing what they're doing there to be able to create cross server opportunities for, well, not cross server, but like cross region, or yeah, intra region kind of opportunities for people, so that like they can experience, playing or being in a war, um, in an ad hoc kind of way would be really, yeah. I like that kind of way, but they also, I also don't want it to be a distraction. So that means that they don't need to deal with the clear issues that are in the current, the current war system, the current, like, territory system, because like there are issues with it, um, and obviously with regards to the shell companies for sure. Don't just let this be a distraction. Um, it is a really, really good, really cool thing to have instance wars and potentially, casual wars. But like, don't let that basically be, oh, everybody's fine and happy now, etc., etc. So we don't need to work on the thing that's actually broken in the game.
yeah. And I would assume that this is being like something has to be developed on this. Like this is too hot of a topic
Yeah,
for players not to be interested, or for AGS not to be interested. Like they've shown that you know they're answering questions, that they're trying to find solutions for players' problems, and that they're taking that feedback seriously. So like I would be very interested to see what they're actually going to do with this. Um,
yeah, yeah.
because something's got to change. Obviously, like the Shell Corp thing, like that's got to go. You know, uh,
Mm,
in Shell Corps. For those that don't know what Shell Corps are, it's basically creating four companies so that the same 50 people can participate. You take all four companies, you own, you fight and take four territories, one company each, which
yeah,
diverts the way around what should happen, where your war window, if you own multiple companies, will happen at the same time for multiple territories if it's the same
yeah,
company.
yeah,
But if you create different companies and then just bring in the same 50 people from the main company, to for all of them, you can stagger the wars having the same people in every war. That's obviously not how it's designed to work, but players being crafty sons of bitches are going to find ways to do that. You know,
yeah.
and they need to create a system that fixes that. That said, that kind of development takes some time. So we'll see when we
It,
get a fix for that.
yeah, yeah. Fingers crossed on that. Um, yeah, there's been some interesting kind of conversations and stuff going on the forums and on Reddit, sort of thing. And there's been some interesting, um, uh, kind of propositions as well. I imagine you kind of want to chat about the piggy bank, maybe.
So somebody came up with the idea of a craftable piggy bank that can store 100,000 coins, allow them to place one per house. Um, like I can understand this, but I think that like other economic changes and market changes need to happen to devalue certain items so that, you're not paying 3/4 of a million gold for an item, which you can't because you can only have 500,000 on you, so you end up trading other things, or like storing the money on other characters, or storing the money in the company and then pulling it out when you need it, and it like there's stuff like that that speaks to a larger economic problem,
Yeah.
um, and the player like the player cap on money. Um, this is coming from somebody who has a shitload in Eve Online. Like I can tell you, it's not a great thing to have um, an unlimited amount of money at your disposal at all times. Um, because people are going to find ways to abuse that, and the more money that they can have on hand, lends to higher and higher risks of RMT.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So,
I thought for a minute you were going to go with the, the higher amount of money that they have, the more capabilities that they have, or the capabilities they have at their disposal to be able to just, to pivot, uh, when changes occur, to basically maximize, any kind of advantage that they get with changes that aren't really, up to spec, or have issues, or there's or if there's any kind of like issues with rolled out new systems, all that kind of stuff. But like, yeah, the whole RMT side of things is definitely very much a very risky thing as well.
mhm. um, there's also been a number of other like kind of cool ideas. Um, a user on the subreddit Venoms created an interesting idea around transmogs, and what that might
Yeah.
look like.
S-
Enabling people to
Yeah.
dye the different stuff, but also like being able to change out the skins, of various different equipment, so that you can get the item that get a set that makes coherent sense, not just the set that it looks this way because or like some of the people look truly ridiculous because they're trying to find gear with the right stats that in no way has the same look.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's, if you don't know what a transmog system is, like a transmog system essentially is a way of being able to copy the look of one piece of item to another item that has, say for example, the stats that you want, or the perks that you want, or is essentially, you have a piece of gear that performs the way that you want, but looks definitely not the way that you want. But you have a piece of gear that looks the way you want, but doesn't perform how you want. And you kind of want to, you want to smash the good aspects of both of those two things together. And that's basically what a transmogrification system is. A transmog system is to combine those two things, so you have a good looking piece of gear that also performs really well. And yeah, the system, like the system that this guy has kind of like concepted out, it looks really cool.
yeah. Like I would love to see a transmog system added in. There's been a number of different like gear set like mannequin type systems that people have suggested that I think
Mm.
would be really cool. Where like rapidly being able to swap between gear sets that are in the house. Um, I wish that we would get a transmog system. The one that we showed is just a player recreation.
Yeah,
Hopefully
yeah.
something that AGS takes seriously. Um,
We there has been AGS devs that have said that they want to have a transmog system in the game. So I'm fairly certain that there will be a transmog system in the game eventually. It's just a question of when AGS can prioritize work on that sort of thing. Because they obviously have like um, a timeline for various different things that they want to actually get completed and out this year. Um, as for what they will be prioritizing next year, I don't know. But maybe there might be a transmog system in that. Um, but from at least from the devs' perspective, they definitely want to have a transmog system in the game somewhat at some point. But it's just a question of when, really.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
there's basically there's a ton happening in New World. There is a like we've got the new patch. Of course, we've got a follow up to that next week with the expedition and the expedition finder, or expedition group finder. So like, there's more to come. Um, this obviously a lot of this is going to take place tomorrow. We've got stuff
Hmm.
that the community wants, and I think there are groups out there that are really pushing for the more the merrier. Um,
Yep.
you know now is not the time to be quiet about what you want from New World. Um,
Yeah.
you know, I think that now is the time to be loud on the forums and say, hey, now's a good time to say what you want, what changes you think would make the game better. Um, Make sure that you like when you are providing feedback, um, be constructive in that feedback, and like there's a way to present things that uh, is gonna make it so that you're easier to identify, or like that you're easier to understand. Like if I come
Yeah.
into a forum thread and say, "Oh, this sucks," what sucks about it?
Yeah.
Like why does it feel that way? What can be done to improve it? What are any suggestions for a better system? Like you don't necessarily have to be a armchair game dev, but being able to say, I don't like this system because I feel like it requires too much grind, or I don't like this because it does does this in a way that just irks me. The quality of life on this needs to be better by making shards the same, making shards a counter instead of an item in the inventory. Like
Yeah.
there's all
Like,
kinds of stuff like that that the way you present the feedback is going to help. And of course, always remember that the devs are people too, and you should treat them
mhm.
with respect in that they're a person. Like sure, it's their game, it's their livelihood, but like they're also a person. Always remember that. There's few people that seem to forget that on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah, like, your feedback will go through to them a lot better if you don't curse at them, if you don't like, add a bunch of language that makes reading through it, you know, caustic, very, very acidic. Just basically bad, like a horrible experience. If someone has to read through it and it's a really horrible experience, like they're less likely to read through it and take in what you're putting out. But like, there's ways of putting out like your disdain for something without like resorting to what could be considered toxic kind of language, that kind of thing. And of course, there's the best thing to do when it comes to aside from being civil, um, is to give the devs as much information about what you think is wrong, why you think it's wrong, how it feels like to you as a player, and all that kind of stuff. Like more information is always better. The less information the devs have, the more work that they have to do to try and coax it out of you, and the longer that takes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So from there, that hits the end of what we've got for New World. I do want to take a moment and highly suggest that people check out the changes over at nwdb.info.
Yes.
There's a ton of stuff there. Check out the perks. Check out all of these things. You're gonna need to know these changes to keep up with the shifting meta. Um, you know, and and with that, it's going to be interesting to see like what the summer release here is going to bring in for player counts, and what the impact is. And of course, the longer term, later this fall, we're going to be receiving the new zone, which will include Brimstone Sands, and a whole bunch of new content there, including a new expedition, and some other significant changes to be announced.
Yeah.
So, like realistically, New World is getting way better. I would argue it's in the best state that it's ever been. And I think that they're like, so I for those that don't know, I also am one of the mods over on r-new world game, and one of the most frequent threads that pops up is, I used to play this game, is it worth coming back? Or I'm looking to start this game, is it worth playing? And the narrative has very much switched in the last 6 months or so, to basically say, hey, yes, now is the time. Now is a great time to play New World. If you're just starting, if you're looking at coming back, you wanted to wait for more content to be added, there's a ton more to do now. So now is the time. It'll be interesting to see on the server size, with players coming back, if AGS has a plan for a large return of players. Like being able to spool up servers and being able to that's our code.
I know, I noticed that now. Like, I was like, hang on a second.
For those that don't know, we
Nothing
leave this up at the
there.
bottom of the stream.
Nothing happened there. Let's just move on, okay?
If for those that don't know, like, we also play Star Citizen, and Star Citizen has a ton of news. We're gonna get to that after the section on Lost Ark, which is coming up next. I do want to say to people, of course, I know that not every game is interesting, or not every game like kind of hits your expectations, or like is the game that you want to play. But some of them are honestly worth trying and challenging the preconceptions of what's out there. So like, one of the reasons that we leave the Star Citizen referral code up for the whole show is that we want people to see it, because we want people to see the new version of the game. And the new version of Star Citizen is way different. Like, there's some people that are like, oh, it's just a scam, and it's never going to come out. But it's like, those are the people that really haven't seen the game in a while. And I was one of them. In fact, there is one of our shows on YouTube still that has me straight up bashing Star Citizen and just hammering on it. And somebody was like, hey, you should download it again and give it a try, because like, I'd already bought in, so why not?
Yeah.
And I turned around and was like, holy shit, this is actually really good. There is so much more to it, and it's only getting better. So like, we leave that up. In order to use it, basically you can go to robertspaceindustries.com, create an account. The referral code starts you out with a little bit more in-game cash. You do have to buy, because there's no free fly going on at the moment, you do have to buy a
Game package.
A game package. I would highly recommend buying a game package that has both Star Citizen and Squadron 42. Squadron 42 is going to be the single player version. I think it's like $10 more, but it's gonna be worth it. Squadron 42 was also going to release before the online version is. So there is an online playable version that we play all the time. So yeah. That said, let's jump into Lost Ark, and we'll come back to the Star Citizen topic, because there's of course major news on that. The Lost Ark topic is going to take all of 15 minutes, so there's not a whole lot to cover for Lost Ark this week because their major patch was last week.
Just wanting to preload the Lost Ark kind of side of things, but regarding mounts in New World, hopefully the mount system in if it ever comes to New World isn't as ridiculous as the mount system in Lost Ark. Running around in God knows what. I mean, what's the most ridiculous thing that you've seen as a mount in Lost Ark?
The unicorn.
Yeah, unicorn. There we go. Like
rainbow unicorn.
Do you want to run around in a unicorn or a hoverboard, in New World? I mean, there might be some kind of some kind of weird pleasure in some way, shape, or form. But I think the novelty will wear out very quickly.
Oh,
I think the mount system in New World should be something a bit different. Anyway, let's go to Lost Ark.
So on the Lost Ark side of things, one of the major things is that they have disabled, after recently adding power passes for purchase, have been temporarily disabled with the in-game store as they work to resolve an unintended issue. The issue in question is that it wasn't redeeming, and would allow you to redeem against several characters, allowing you to rapidly fill an entire roster of tier 3 characters. So, obviously not something they intended. So, it's good on them to, hey, we're going to cut this. We're going to fix this. And yeah, that was kind of a huge one. From there, the July Fever Time event has been added. Basically logging in for several days in a row between July 23rd and the 31st is going to enable you to get various different unlocks that are going to help you in progressing your characters. Things like honing support selection chests, guardian stone selection pouches, battle item chests, all things that are going to make your life a little bit easier. So yeah. And how do they plan to fix that? Remove the characters that exploit it? I think they're just going to level down the characters that exploited it back to probably fresh characters pre-change, and then if they bought like resources to get them past that, they'll probably just there's a ton of ways that they can roll these things back, and because it's like a lot of the stuff is player specific, and these players will have known that they fucked up. So yeah.
Yep.
I think that's a big thing. The Lost Ark updates, added a new jukebox song and a waiting period to power pass gold and a whole bunch of fixes. Like the jukebox is actually a really cool thing because you're able to pick the music when you're at your settlement. It sounds small, but like being able to go out and get new music for it adds a little bit to things and makes it a little bit more fun. It's yet another collectible in a game of so many goddamn collectibles. It's not even funny.
Endless collectibles. Yeah.
Like back in the day, I was like, oh, I'm gonna 100% this game, and now I'm like, I can't. this is taking way too long.
Sweet summer child.
And then I think we talked about the Fever Time rewards. Like that's going to be a huge boon to players who are kind of stuck and need a little bit of extra honing materials of specific types. It allows you to actually like select what you want.
That's really cool.
And yeah, like again, the Lost Ark section today is going to be real short because that's basically it. Because again, last week was their major release. So just as Star Citizen and New World both had major releases this week, thank God they offset them. Otherwise, we'd be here for 6 hours.
I wonder whether those rewards are going to be bind to character or bind to roster. Not wanting to obviously trigger you in some way, shape, or form.
So too late. I
know the phrases, guys. I know the phrases that will trigger him. So
I've had a gripe with the developers about this for so long. The difference between bind to character and bind to roster is fucking colossal. Like, I have a whole bunch of
Yeah.
resources that I would love to use on a lower level character that are bound to characters that no, you have to suck it up. You have to buy those resources from another character. You can't sell them to yourself. It's like, why can't I just do this? Just let me do what I want to do. I already ground and did the work to get it. Just let me do it. It's my roster. It's not impacting other people. you know
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
like,
Exactly.
so I'm a huge fan of binding everything to roster and not to the individual character. like like hard fast, like that is, yeah. um that said, before I go into like a super long tangent on that, we've got a lot to cover on Star Citizen. uh
Yeah,
so
I'm sorry. That was poor form on me to stoop so low. Yeah. Sorry
so
about that.
as we've said, I know a lot of people out there look at Star Citizen and go, you know why why would you want to back Star Citizen? It's a scam. It's terrible. It's all these things. And a lot of people don't realize that the game is so much further along than the last time they looked in on it. Yes, it still has a lot more development to go, but it is very much something that is progressing rapidly now.
Mm.
And with the patch this week, or actually tomorrow, um, it's gonna be even a step further.
You know
Um,
what? Strangely, personally, I think the thing that made me sort of like go, you know what, I'm gonna give Star Citizen a try. I think was when you linked me the video, like it's a very technical video about like all the work that they're doing with the quantum system and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of the tech that they are developing from scratch, like this is tech that are basically that they're developing, that they feel like they need to develop in order for for underlying systems, in order for certain things to sort of occur naturally or appear to occur fairly naturally, as they're developing what they refer to as a universe simulator, right? Think of it very much in terms of like taking sort of Sim City or like city skylines, but like expanding it to like planets, and then like and like systems, and then like clusters of systems and that kind of stuff. And it's just like I kind of feel like there's very few developers out there that are developing systems this deep and this complex for our entertainment and enjoyment. Like there's very few companies out there that are putting this kind of thinking and this kind of like longevity of thought and process together just for something for us to play, and for a playground for us, and when you kind of realize like how much effort is being put into it, and you kind of go like, actually, you know what, I think I should try this out just to sort of see how they're progressing with this. Because like one of the very few things, and it seems very trivial when you talk about it, but when you realize like there's very few, if not any, developers who actually have tried to put this together and actually try and like code this. Having two people being able to interact, one in a ship looking out of the windows in the ship, or sitting in the pilot seat looking out of the cockpit, and seeing somebody in a station through a window who is like in FPS mode, like running about a sort of like an area that has a window out into the world. Like having that be a thing, is surprisingly not common whatsoever in a game. You can obviously experience something similar to that, as a first person player, and you're seeing like NPCs walking around and stuff like that. But it's a very different thing when you want to actually put it together as a multiplayer experience. And it's just like that level of like, this hasn't been done apparently, but we will need to do it, and we will figure out a way to do it, and actually deliver on that is a very important thing. And it's something that it seems that CIG are doing that consistently, whereas other developers in the gaming industry just kind of aren't. So in a sense, they're trailblazers for a lot of various different ways. And this may seem like I am, um, you know, being very positive to CIG, but it's with good cause, and it's one of the reasons why, when I saw some of the presentation that they were doing about underlying systems, that I was like, I have to check this game out. That was the thing that sold me in that regard. And when I actually got into the nitty gritty of actually playing the game, there was a lot of like interesting systems and a lot of kind of cool, just cool things of being able of like zero loading screens. There's no loading screens in the entire game, aside from obviously loading in and when you die, right? Other than that, there are no loading screens in the entirety of the game, which is just a ridiculous feat to do in terms
Yes.
of the scale that they're trying to do. Anyway, I'm
Yes.
rambling now.
Like it
Clearly rambling.
really is like it's second to none. Not having any loading screens, not like being able to like recently we saw and this is part of our first bullet point here. They've been testing out new sizes for the servers. For the longest time, it's been a maximum of 50 on the server, just to make sure that they're stable and all that. But in the last couple of patches to the PTU, they've been playing around with server size. How many players
Mhm.
can it actually hold, and uh, is it able to handle it? And the test went so well that they're now officially doubling the server size to 100, while they prep for 3.18, which would be the initial start to server meshing. And we actually saw them go as high as 120, and actually having 120 people on one ship. So not just
Yeah,
like
there's
the server being able to handle 120 people total, but like 120 people with almost no lag
in the
in
same
one spot
location.
on
Yeah,
a moving ship. Like
yeah.
that's pretty
This
impressive.
yeah, that is extremely impressive. Like considering that, like a lot of a lot of games, especially um, what is it? There's a content creator on YouTube that does a lot of very specific um like data driven work on how servers perform when it comes to certain FPS games, right? Things like League of Legends, things like PUBG, things like Call of Duty, all that kind of stuff, right? And tracks basically the sort of like the server performance from a player perspective side. At the start of games when there's like a whole bunch of people, and then as the game kind of progresses, that sort of thing. And very much like, especially when it comes to sort of battle royale games that have like 100 people or so, like at the start of the game, like the server performance at that particular point in time is dog shit most of the time, right? Like you have server performance in that scenario, and like the lag time on the server kind of giving you information is pretty terrible, right? Comparatively to like sort of middle to end game. Having this isn't like 100 people in the single same place. There's 100 people like spread out on a big map. They are having firefights every so often, but like it's not like everybody's all in one location. So when you have like a situation like you've seen in a ship where you have over 100 people, or around 100 people in a same place, and it's still performing well, or still performing fairly okay, like that is a ridiculously impressive thing, because like there is a lot of information being having to be spooled up and transferred to every single client.
Mhm.
Like it is ridiculous. It scales almost logarithmically. It's crazy.
And so like, and that speaks really well towards like being able to release ships like the Javelin. where it's going to have 50 to 80 crew. You know,
Mm.
some of that is going to be AI and server blades. Server blade AIs in the ship, but like a lot of that is going to be actual people, which is going to be pretty impressive to see. And of course, you also want to be able to have these larger scale battles. Um, I think I showcased this on another video that we released on our YouTube. Um, but
Yeah.
I do want to show this because this is absolutely crazy. Um,
Yeah, go for it. Check it out.
I gotta get it to load the higher
Oh
res
yeah.
version.
Make sure you cut the background music as well.
Oh,
There we go.
so each of those ships is crewed with potentially several people. When this was 120 people duking it out in one epic massive battle. Um, you know, and even beyond that, there's been other kind of major like huge tests. And I'm gonna mute the audio on this one, but this one's actually from Morphology. Um, and this is the 100 people in one ship. 100 plus people in an 890 jump. Like, the game is still, as said, by two in chat here, the game is still multiple years out from being finished, but you know what you're not seeing here is a lot of lag stuttering, and you can see out the window that this ship is in quantum drive, like they're moving, you know which is impressive. Yeah,
Yeah,
this looks
except
like what the captain quarters should have been in Eve years ago, but they dumped out of that,
yeah,
and like,
the big difference between Captain's Quarters from years ago in Eve is, that was just you in a room and that's it. This is you and 100 other people, on your
mhm.
ship while you're traveling, from one planet to another, which is just fucking cool.
Yeah, like this is the kind of stuff that makes me excited because like when I used to play Eve Online, I always wished that the captain's quarters that they made would have expanded out into having like a corporation kind of clubhouse. you know and like the 890 jump I see as like the ultimate boardroom meeting of the directors, because it's literally got the directors conference table up in the front there. you
Oh
know
yeah.
like it's just a really cool thing, and it seems small, but like the role playing aspects that are possible in it are huge. The combat and flight simulator aspect of the game is incredible. The more stuff that they add with the NPCs, and like the AI for them, being able to bring them in a variety of different ways, including ships landing, NPC flown ships landing on the surface and having NPC reinforcements flood into a facility. It's just really cool. You know, um, Yeah, and on the Eve Online front, they dumped out of it for a number of reasons. One, because the carbon engine was pretty trash, um, that was running it, and there was a lot of performance issues. But also,
They
you know, the community
they
went and bitched about a number of things.
not wanting to say something and not wanting to mention something that may be kind of like, you know, a bit of a uh, familiar sounding thing, but like the Carbon engine was at one particular point actually trying to kill people's GPUs.
Yes, it succeeded in
It
a number of
was
times.
yes,
There are
yeah,
fires associated with that graphics engine. Like,
yeah. That's the
yeah,
crazy thing. That's the crazy thing.
yeah. Uh, so since all of this, like, you know, it's important to note the game's still in alpha. So yes, expect there to be bugs when you're playing it.
Mm.
Report those bugs so they can fix them. But like, have fun with it. Like, there's so much fun. There's so much to do in the game still. Like, you know, and there's more being added all of the time. The last couple of patches, you know, there's, you know, their their
They're
iterations on their PTU happen like almost daily at some
it
points.
feels like that. Like
Uh,
they're running out of letters of the alphabet at this
yeah.
point.
So like the PTU has been going for almost a month on this, and I believe the final version is what? Oh?
I think
No,
it's
you.
no, it's you.
Yeah. So like they've went all the way from A, B, C, D, E, like all the way to U in versions on
Yeah,
the PTU in a month. Because they're not afraid to like go in, fix something, see if it actually fixes it, get it tested, and then dump out of it. Um,
yeah.
you know, so actually, New World's engine is no longer the lumber. In a way, it's the Lumberyard engine, but it's actually the Azoth engine because it's been edited so far from even the Lumberyard engine that they had to rename it.
In
Um,
a very strange way, because like I know that to some degree, I you can obviously sort of correct me if I'm wrong here, but like I think they're using I think in Star Citizen they're using a very heavily modified Lumberyard
yes,
engine.
yes. So the other thing
Like
about the graphics cards and the Lumberyard engine, it was never the Lumberyard engine. This has been confirmed by EVGA, Gigabit, and Asus. Like
as
GPU manufacturers have come out and said there were hardware flaws,
yeah,
like
and
physical soldering issues, poorly designed VRAM, like or poorly designed VRMs,
yeah,
you know, and a variety of other reasons that caused larger issues, and
yeah,
that
and
caused,
this
you know, graphics cards to fry. And it was more that these are like cutting edge games that are pushing even high end equipment to its limits. But you look back and, you know, Alien Isolation was killing, you know, 3090s, you know, which isn't even, you know, isn't even a new game, you know. Or you know, you look back and, you know, Civ 6 is killing GPUs, like, you know. And 3090s just kind of are what they are. Like, you know, they're when you get that close to the bleeding edge, you know, shit bleeds. You know, it's not just,
hmm
you know, it's not just your wallet bleeding. It's, you know, um, you're testing stuff that isn't necessarily um, fully thought out. You know,
exactly. And the thing is, like, this stuff was actually covered under with Gamers Nexus and some even more like geeky kind of like heavily like in the know kind of guys who know how to test this stuff and see whether it's actually the software or whether it's actually the hardware that's at fault. And it was always when it comes to the the Nvidia stuff, like, yeah, it was very much how Nvidia and how Gigabyte kind of set their cards up.
yeah.
And it's only
Nvidia has some serious challenges with some of the stuff that they try and use to protect against overvolting. They try and save money by using shunts instead of like actual like resistors. And it's because resistors cost more. Shunts are easy, but the problem is they're not precise, which has led to basically like 3090s had like a 20 to 30% uh, over like overdraw. Like you would
Yeah,
set in
over
the software
voltage.
to
Yeah.
say, hey, don't give any more voltage past this point, and the card would still draw 30% more than the driver set limit, which tells you what the fuck is the limit for at that point. You know, like if
The
your
other thing
card
is
can't
there should be
meaningfully
hardware
do
that
that.
prevents that kind of thing from occurring,
Yeah.
and not hardware that just basically like causes it to basically die. Like there
Yeah.
should be things that be shutting the
And
card
this
down
is where like
safely.
and
Yeah,
this
and
is
it
where
just wasn't
VRM
there.
design is also important, where like on several of the 3090s, the issue with the 3090 became offset VRMs. So you'd have 13 VRM modules on one side and 12 on the other. Guess which side
Mm,
fried? Because it was getting too little or too much, or was trying to force too much power through the side with 12. You know,
hmm
and it blew the
hmm
first one in line. Who would have thought? You know,
Yeah,
so like there's stuff like that where it's like, you know, oftentimes the game is blamed because like New World got a bad
it's
rap
the
for it,
it's the new
but it
game
wasn't
that
New World.
yeah, yeah,
It was just the
it
quantity
was
of people playing one game that was showcasing the problem with the hardware, not the
yeah, it
game
wasn't the
itself
actual
causing it.
game.
You know, um,
Because there were issues with people losing GPUs, in very much the same way from different games. Like
mhm.
it's just that like at that particular time, New World was the hot game to play, and to be involved with, and because of that, it got the blame unfairly because Nvidia's sort of like card tech and sort of how they kind of like were designing their cards was at a substandard level. And you know what? I'm going to make a prediction. There's going to be a game that comes out when the 4000 series comes, and people are going to unfairly blame that particular game for causing fires that could potentially cause
Yes,
somebody to either lose their
and
life potentially, because these cards are so heavily, the 4000 series are so heavily and ridiculously volted. Anyway,
yes,
sorry, you were going to say something.
like ridiculously so. Like it's gonna be real bad. Uh, like they're not fucking around. Like you're talking about 800 watts on the 4090 Ti. Like 800 watts for just the GPU. Like that is
And
a
this and that's
shitload of power.
and that's the requested voltage, right? That's not
Yeah.
the power spike voltage, which can be up to 100% more than that, which means that you can potentially have a very, very short transient spike of 1.6 kilowatt.
Hmm.
That can cause a fire.
Yeah. So now the other side of that is that people are going to have problems with cables
Yes.
and daisy chaining cables, which
Yes.
like is already a problem on the 3090s in that
Mhm.
one cable will not give your 3090 like from power supply to GPU. One cable when it's requesting up to 3 on some of the models does not mean one cable over and then daisy chain, daisy chain. No. 1 to 1, 1 to 1, 1 to 1. All of them. Like you're talking about a lot of fucking power to be putting through, and especially if you buy cheap extenders and cheap, cheap 8 pins, and you're not getting
And
the actual amount
yeah,
of copper to transfer that power through. Like,
and you may complain like, oh, but that doesn't look neat. Well, yeah, I mean, neither does a PC completely burnt out. Like, and you know
mhm.
what, like a PC that's completely burnt out does not perform anywhere near as well as a PC that does not look as neat but performs completely fine. So yeah, just let that be our public service announcement, right?
I'm waiting for the
I'm not
day
quite
that
sure
there's
why we
going to
got to
be a
this, but
24 pin. There's going to be a 24 pin adapter that goes to GPU at some point.
yeah, there must
Like
be.
just because they're going to sit there and say like, listen, we're not fucking around anymore. Like people cannot do an 8 pin daisy chained. It actually needs this much copper to transfer the power. Like,
Yeah, yeah, very
you
much
know,
so.
yeah. So with that, back to Star Citizen because there's a decent amount to cover
Yes.
here. Um,
Yeah.
so basically they went through a number of revisions. There's no like super big, massive changes. Um, you know,
I mean, there apart from the 120 player capacity
yeah,
server tests and stuff, like, but you know,
um, a bunch of performance passes, tons of bug fixes, updated the reshade support, so like stuff is going to look really good. Um, but like there's they're also trying to limit and fixing like client side crashes and fixing server side crashes, so we're going to get less 30Ks, and less times where you gotta like load everything back in, and the server just dumping everybody out. So like that's all good. um
it's interesting because I've had, there's definitely been situations where I've been providing feedback for certain various different things. And we'll get to sort of like how you should actually effectively provide feedback. But like, there's definitely been scenarios where I've been providing feedback and providing video examples of like me having issues with certain things, and like the next patch the next day, or a couple of days time, like they've literally resolved that issue, and it's in the actual like patch notes. So they're really fast at dealing with this stuff.
so this brings us to the issue council itself. um
Yeah.
they are this is kind of funny in a couple of ways. They're only supporting Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and Edge. Do not
Yeah.
try and connect to issue council through other browsers. Like I know a lot of people out
Yeah.
there use
Stop
Tor,
using your
and
Tor. Stop using your Tor browser on it.
yeah. So like it is what it is. Like if you want to participate in the issue council stuff, like use a what the rest of the world uses for internet browsers.
What's
You
referred
know,
to as a reputable browser.
yeah. Um, and there's a number of issues that come into play for this. Like, you know, it's not just that they want to track by account. It's that like there's actually kind of important stuff that like compatibility issues with certain browsers. Um, so aside from that, there's a Galactopedia update that came out. We're not going to go into that. It's basically
Mhm.
just some lore dash like Wikipedia type updates on like certain like systems and events. Um,
Yeah.
and they also had they've got a replay of the Battle of the Bricks,
Hmm.
which is another big one. Or another kind of cool event that they had. That said, let's talk about 3.17.2. So 3.17.2 officially launches tomorrow. This will include the
Yes.
Siege of Orison. It'll include a new SAM-site missile drivable ground vehicle.
Ah, yes,
Um,
yes.
and it will have a variety of other major fixes, including the increased server size to 100 officially. And this will be coming to the live server. So this will be the new live build. The other
Hmm.
major thing, and this is one of those moments of like, hey, this might be a good time to get in. They are wiping everyone's money.
Yep.
Money and inventory is getting wiped. So there's a persistence wipe because they're starting to move towards the effort is to start to move towards 3.18, which in 3.18 is going to include a full inventory rework, as well as the initial parts of persistent entity streaming, and like persistent hangers and stuff like that. So like there's a lot coming in 3.18. We're going to pretty soon see 3.18 hit Evocati. It has been in development. It is like obviously like it's going to build off of 3.17.2, but there are bits of it that have been in development that are going to be added, and it will start going through a relatively long PTU phase. Because
Yep.
3.18 is basically a preparation for 4.0, which 4.0
Yeah.
will be dynamic server meshing, the release of Pyro and all of that, which we should see uh, in at least PTU by the end of the year. That's according to the developers. So
Yep.
basically, like now is when things start you know, really like
Getting
one
interesting.
there's going to be a lot of like new content. Like the Siege of Orison is
Yeah.
pretty cool. Um,
Well,
but
the point two patch is basically designed to be, to have a lot of content there for players to kind of get
um,
stuck into for a long period of time, while 3.18 is basically going through its PTU phases, right?
and then this also increases increases a bunch of other like 3.18 is going to have some gameplay changes in terms of loading and unloading ships. That is going to be pretty meaningful. The
Mm.
changeover to like the full persistent streaming in 4.0 is going to be fucking massive. Um, but it's
That is a
not
colossal
4.0
change.
is going to come out with additional like it's going to come out with additional content that we haven't seen in terms of like pyro jump gates and or jump points and stuff like that. Like, there's going to be new content there, but like a lot of the content is going to be stuff that we've also kind of already seen. Like, it's just going to be in other systems. Um, so like the big change is going to be to the servers, and that's the kind of thing that people
Yeah.
need to be looking at more so than
And I
you
think
know
the other thing is, I think, and we stressed the sort of like the server population kind of change, and I think, if aside from those few examples of like people doing the crazy kind of things of putting 100 people on a single ship, or sort of flying around with in a multi-crew ship and being able to engage a whole bunch of other multi-crew ships, like in a mass brawl kind of thing. Like we've experienced something similar to that with the 50-person cap. But like I think the thing that people don't realize, but will kind of, it'll dawn on them, is when you increase the player cap, you increase the capacity for players to interact with each other. Like more players who interact with more players, and when that happens, you get more interesting gameplay, more interesting events, and meetings, and like scenarios occurring, right? And it's one of those it's one of those sort of interesting things where I watched like someone going through, essentially seeing what it's like being a pirate rather than just being a mission runner and that kind of stuff. And essentially he ended up finding a completely different game in Star Citizen, and the game that he found was a game of interacting with other people rather than just interacting with NPCs. He found a game where you know he realized that the level of interaction with other people can be very interesting and nuanced in a whole manner of different ways, even if you're a pirate, right? And so when you consider that that was done on a server that like caps the population at 50, when you have a server that has a pop cap, or population cap of 120, maybe even 130 potentially, you know the opportunities for interesting, like and unique scenarios to occur between actual players rather than NPCs, it is very exciting. Much more so than I think a lot of people, give it credit for.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, so I think that there's a lot that needs to be discussed about like the future of the game. Um, but like I think that one of the biggest things that can be said is that they're putting their money where their mouth is. Um, and we released a video earlier this week on YouTube, and we're actually going to play it here as the end of the show. Talking about Star Citizen's reinvestment of their money into the game and comparing that against Eve Online, who is not. Um, so as we're gonna play the video and then it'll dump out into the um, into our exit video, and then we'll be in Discord, kind of hanging out, talking with people, having a good time. So if you would like to come chat, please feel free. Our Discord is always open to people, and of course we're pretty chill to chat with. So with that, we're gonna switch over to the video, because this is a pretty good video on like kind of some investigative analysis into Star Citizen and EVE Online, and comparing the two from like a company finance and staffing standpoint. So yeah.
Roll the tape.
Welcome everybody to the NWO show, your source for all things about MMOs. Today we're going to be talking about money. We're going to be talking about studios. We're going to be talking about appropriate staffing sizes and where studio funding actually goes. And to compare these two things, we're going to use Star Citizen and EVE Online. These are obviously two very different companies. CIG, Cloud Imperium Games, and CCP Games are obviously in two very different life cycles. One of them is developing their first couple of games, Squadron 42 and of course Star Citizen, and CCP Games is developing, I would say EVE Online, but you'll pretty rapidly see that that's not as much of a case as you might think. They're developing a first-person shooter and possibly another game that has not been announced yet. But let's dive into this. This is basically going to be almost entirely about money, money and staff size, and there's some troubling conclusions that are really unfortunate from this. So let's dive right in. For those that don't know, Pearl Abyss is a publicly traded company, and thus has to release quarterly earnings, and they have to present this information publicly. So within that document, there's the Q4 2021 breakdown, which showcases basically the last year. Unfortunately, the units in this are in billion Korean won, which adds another little hurdle. And if you look at the Q1 for 2022, they actually messed up the decimal points. But for last year, the equivalent income for last year in US dollars is about $59 million. It's a little over that. That's a decent sum of money for an IP that is effectively, effectively 20 years old. It's impressive that the game has managed to last this long, and more power to them for continuing to be able to pull in money off of it. However, this leads us to talking about CIG Games, Cloud Imperium, where they are very public about every dollar that comes in. In fact, you can find out, at any specific time of day how much money they're bringing in, by day how much money they're bringing in, by week, and by month. And there are community members out there who actively track that on a monthly basis. So, to best showcase this, you can obviously see that over the years it's been relatively stable, and about 2019 things started to change. Significant content was being added, significant advancements were being seen. 2020, you saw all kinds of new stuff come in. 2021 was just a whole different level of quality for the game, and a whole lot more content was added to the game. Obviously 2022 here is going to be massive. Like, that's going to blow away all of their funding, because you can already tell that June was an impressive month. May was an impressive month, but like the whole year is making way more money than they have in the past. But we're going to talk about 2021 as a year, as a comparison between the two. And the reason we're going to do this is that we have, as shown, the values for both easily accessible and understandable. So you can see that in 2021, CIG Games pulled in $86 million. This is obviously more than EVE Online, but that's not a bad thing. Now, when it comes to money, the next inevitable question is, what is it spent on? Is the money that you are putting into the game through through pledges, through subscription fees, through whatever, is it making it back into the game? And one of the easiest ways to determine that is, how much are the developers spending on people, on actual staff? Because obviously computers can't write code. You have, like, obviously you have to buy equipment to write it on, but that's a relatively static cost, and it's more of a capital cost. It's less of a human capital. Human capital is where you're gonna get all of your actual work done. So earlier this year was FanFest for EVE Online. Hilmar got up on stage and announced proudly that CCP Games is now staffing basically the most amount of people that it has since 2016. And that this is a huge increase in the development, and they're really reinvesting in EVE Online. Now, you'll note that the numbers here are, I think this chart is deliberately built without lines to prevent an exact number from being drawn. But that's fine. Ballpark, 140 staff work on EVE Online. So, Cloud Imperium Games also, through their financial reporting in, unfortunately there isn't a newer one than this, but we have had additional reporting since. They're required to showcase these, they're not required, they're actually not required because they're not a publicly traded company. However, because they are a crowd-funded company, people want to know where the money's going, what's being spent on what. Well, they're very open about this. How much money is being spent on salaries, how much money is being spent on publishing and marketing, contracted development costs, other development costs. CapEx, what didn't they spend that they were able to put towards future investments? Fundamentally, they showcase this pretty well, but they also tell us exactly how many developers they have, and what people are working on. So you can see that in 2020 they had 512 staff. Newer information based on reports from developers on the forums is that this is closer to 600 now, or this is around 600 now, plus or minus a few, and they have a number of positions they're hiring for. In case people can't see this, I want to zoom in to showcase. Now, CIG, Cloud Imperium Games, is only making Star Citizen and Squadron 42. Squadron 42 has a lot of crossover assets that will work directly for Star Citizen, which means all of the development for it is really going to come back and assist Star Citizen in the end anyways. Why is this important? As we discussed, the finances, Star Citizen made $86 million last year. EVE Online, when you equate it out, made $59 million. Now, obviously these are two different budgets, but if you were to equalize it, if you were to equalize the two budgets, CCP Games should have a staff of 271 more than it currently has. So it should have a staff of 413. Instead, it has a staff of 140. Now, this is unfortunate news, but this showcases a larger issue with CCP, in my opinion. Now, CCP Games is of course developing other games. They're looking to the future. They're looking to develop a new first-person shooter. They've got potentially another unannounced game that they're working on in the background. But the reality is, EVE Online is not their priority based on staffing, based on where the money is going. It has not, and at least as far back as their charts go, for 2016, where they said they had just over 80 staff working on it, and the game was making more money back then, it has not been a significant effort for them. That's of course, that's pre-pandemic by several years, and they held steady at 88, around 80 staff. So really, what this comes out to say is that the development was already more than paid for EVE Online. The excess money was flooding over into other projects for many years. You look at Eve Valkyrie, you look at Gunjack, you look at any of these other games that they've developed. They were good games. However, they really only broke even with their development costs. They never really made an excess profit. One of the challenges here is discussing this in true context. Understanding that they're not spending the money on EVE Online, and then turning around and also saying, by the way, your subscription price is going up because we need the money to develop EVE Online. No, you don't. You have plenty of money. If your competitor, who has openly been called a scam for Star Citizen, by many people is considered a scam, if they can afford to hire 600 developers, and the best you can do is 140 with a similar budget, let's be real, you're fleecing your community for extra cash at that point. You didn't have a cash flow problem. I don't want to piss off the EVE Online community, but unfortunately, the numbers here don't lie. It is what it is. I'm very interested to see what both the Star Citizen community and the EVE Online community think about these numbers, and what direction do you think things are going? If you're interested, EVE Online unfortunately doesn't have a referral code, so there's nothing I can do on that front. But if you're interested in trying Star Citizen, our referral code is up on the screen now. It's also below if you want to copy it from there. Feel free to try it. If you want to use if you use our link, you get a little extra starting cash. And yeah. So with that, I want to thank everybody for listening to my long rant about finances. And I hope everybody learned something. And we will see you for future episodes. For those that don't know, every week, Wednesday at about 6 o'clock Eastern Time, we have a live show on Twitch. So feel free to come follow us there. It's twitch.tv/New World Order Show. We're more than happy to have you guys come chat. We do talk consistently about New World, Lost Ark, and Star Citizen on the show, and occasionally we've been known to also cover online topics as they come up. So, with that, thank you all, and we'll see you in another video.